All right, guys. So, Mysterious T came out with her part 1, episode 1, part 2. I'm just confused on the episodes and how they work. The other day, it was like a few days ago, and I tried watching it. I was like, okay, and then like I don't know, I'm a little burnt out on Tricia, so I was like, you know what? A lot of this is just the same thing. I'm not going to worry about it. And so Mama Gut watched it, and she talked about it on our podcast. On the Mom and Papa Gut channel, which shameless self-plug can be conveniently found on my channel. If you look at it like this at the bottom, look at that. Featured channels, Mom and Papa Gut. Beautiful. Go watch it. Anyway, what I didn't realize is that during the middle of that segment, what I realized is that the video's an hour longer than the original. And I was like, holy shit, how much could there possibly be new? So I was like, all right, I guess I have to watch it. So I watched a little bit of it, but we're just gonna restart it. I watched like a half an hour of it. So we're just gonna restart it, and we're gonna watch this at like what, 1.5, maybe a little more, depending on whatever. And let's see the new information, because there must be a ton of new information here.
Hey, what's up, you guys? Before we get into part 2, there's a few things I want to clarify. This is
and don't worry, if it sounds too fast, you get used to it after a little bit.
Upload a part 2 because the original video got removed due to privacy claims. The night that Trisha had her breakdown on Twitter, I received 3 separate privacy claims on 3 different videos, including this one. The timestamps that were chosen were specific to Trisha and not anyone else that was in the video. The images and the information that I used were straight from Trisha's public Twitter account, her Instagram, and YouTube channel. All of this information that I put in my video has been up for years, but apparently that doesn't matter to YouTube because they removed the video. It was all speculation that it was Trisha, because when you get privacy claims, they give you no information in the emails besides the timestamps, and you have to figure out what information to remove. Now, like I just said, it was all speculation that it was Trisha until recently. Trisha literally admitted in a video that she uploaded and she has now taken down that she did in fact put privacy claims on videos. So check out this clip real quick and you'll see what I mean.
Okay. I will flag if you have my family's pictures that are not on social media. If there's a family member that's not on social media and I've done everything I can to erase them off of social media, like, yes, I will flag that, because now it's a privacy issue, and it's been way past the violation terms as far as doxing, as far as really serious ish in the past couple weeks, and it's just like, that does not fly. I will not stand for that. Like, if you're gonna dox someone that's not on social media, that's related to me, Moses, whatever the case is, like, yes, like, I will do a privacy complaint, and YouTube has been very, very good about the privacy complaint issues.
It's interesting because obviously all the images Mysterious used, Trisha or their parents or whatever had posted. But it is within Trisha's fashion to be like, no, I had a valid reason for that. You were actually harassing my family. You know what I mean? Which is like just not true.
So if this is your first time watching this video, the photos that I used, I showed earlier, they were straight from Trisha's Instagram and Twitter. And what I did is I debunked a lie that Trisha told about her own father to millions of people that she put out publicly. She put out this lie about her own father, not me. This is my opinion, but Trisha has been doing everything in her power to silence me because people are seeing the truth with her. I have received a total of 13 claims in a matter of 4 weeks and a video takedown. Use your own judgment, but to me, it's pretty obvious what's going on here. Now,
it's pretty weird because I haven't gotten a single claim and I've watched all her videos. I will say one thing though, and this is something I would watch out for from a serious perspective, is that she seems to be taking this very personally now. You know? And I'm not saying that Trisha didn't do this thing. I'm just saying that I don't want to see her go off like the rails with Trisha. I think it's time, after this video, I think it's time to like move on from Trisha Paytas and like talk about something else and enjoy yourself doing your content, because you haven't been enjoying yourself. Like, I know I look at your channel and like you constantly are removing videos because you're getting backlash. You kind of just have to like say fuck it to the backlash. And I know that you hit fast, and so you got hit hard with like the negative attention. But that's just my my advice. Move on and have fun with your content again.
Now, one more thing before we get started on the actual video. There is new evidence in this video if you have already watched the original upload. So you are getting brand new information in this video in certain parts. There's also some parts of the video that I could have chosen my words better, so there are certain parts that I have redone as well. I am also centering the teacher's name more in certain parts of the video, but the parts where I have...
Oh, on the Jason video? Okay, but that's like a little bit different, right? The Jason video, okay, sure. But you get my point. Like, don't do... Like, the Jason video, I guess, sounds interesting. I'm just saying, don't go too kooky. Don't go too cuckoo.
To show the evidence to prove what I need to, his name will not be censored. I want to ask anyone that is reporting on the story to please censor the teacher's name as much as possible, because he should have never been brought publicly in the first place. I had hoped that Trisha would do the right thing and retract what she has said about the teacher, so I could eventually remove this video. And who knows, that may happen one of these days. But until then, this video will remain up. Lastly, I want to put a disclaimer on this video, and that is if you are an SA survivor, this video will be triggering, so please do not watch it if you are easily triggered. I want to stress to everyone that I understand that every SA survivor handles their trauma differently, and I completely understand that certain parts of this video could relate to you or could have happened to you or someone you know. but I want you to know that I am mainly focusing on Trisha and Trisha only, and the mountains of evidence that I presented in episode 1 and in the video that you're getting ready to watch. Please, if you choose to watch the series, please watch episode 1 first, and then watch this video, and please look at the situation as a whole, because I drew all my opinions and conclusions based on all the evidence that I present in both videos. Please don't focus on one specific thing, because I packed both videos with so much information so that you could see the overall picture.
Okay, so really quick. Okay, I understand the trigger warning. It makes sense because we're going to talk about sexual assault. I do totally get it. Here's my thing, though, is that like if you're saying something about Trisha that would be generally invalidating to a survivor, and this is for anybody out there, then you shouldn't be saying that thing. And that's something that Mysterious caught like some flack for, is that she went very heavily on about how Mr. R, I guess she has to censor it. I'm not going to care too much, though. About how he was like a really good person in the community, so like, you know, I don't think he could have done it, kind of a thing. That's the energy that was given off. And I know she's tried to backtrack and say like, no, I was just saying, or other people were trying to defend her and say like, no, they're just saying that if this happened, it would have been a big deal. Thing is that good people, not good people, get away with sexual assault all the time because people think they're good people. And so I would not, that's not a strong argument. A strong argument is that Trisha like didn't she promoted misinformation. She said, there's objective proof this happened, and then it just doesn't exist. Right? That's the information that I focus on, not the general invalidating claim of like, you know, he was such a good guy. You know, how could we would have found out? You silly good. You know what I mean? It's not a good thing to say.
Let's get into the original video. Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today is a part 2 of episode 1 of my Trisha Paytas series. If you have not seen the very first episode of this series, please try to watch it before you get into this video, because there's a lot from that episode that will tie into today's video. So I will link that in the description box down below. I want to thank everyone for all the love on this video and all the new subscribers. I really, really appreciate it. Before we get into today's video, if YouTube monetizes this video, I will be donating the ad revenue to the charity that's listed in the description box down below. I'm just trying to turn negative into a positive with this video. And if you want more information on the charity and why I feel so strongly about this, there is more information in the description box down below. I'm going to keep this intro short, but I want to make one thing crystal clear.
Let's see. The charity is... Such fucking charity. Okay. Oh, it's Rain. Okay, that makes sense.
I believe Trisha has experienced trauma in their childhood. I will never deny that. There was an incident that we talked about in episode 1 with Trisha's mother's boyfriend, Tiger. And there's another incident that we will talk about later in the video with Trisha's stepdad that I believe to be true as well. It's just
somebody broke into my house when I was young. It was like my aunt lived with us, and it was my aunt's, like, it wasn't her boyfriend. She was like just sleeping with the guy at the time. It's kind of fucked up, actually. Anyway,
stories that have come out during frenemies that I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around. And I think that after episode 1, a lot of you do agree. The main topic of today's video is a teacher that Trisha doxed online and urged her followers to look up an arrest that does not exist anywhere. But just a heads up, we will not be talking about that until later on in the video. And if you want to skip around, there is chapters listed below. So let's get started. As some of you may know, Trisha recently started a podcast that is called My Chemical Imbalance, and on September 1st, Trisha uploaded an episode and said something very interesting. The clip you are getting ready to watch backs up a lot of what we talked about in episode 1. For the past few months, Trisha has been telling everyone that they were never bullied in school, and that the main problem was that they were overly sexualized by teachers and classmates. Well, Trisha actually told the truth recently and talked about being bullied in school. Check it out.
It was, when I was like about 12, oh no, I was like 13, 14. I was doing a school play. I bounced around schools a lot. I was doing a school play, and I got picked on all the time for being fat when I was actually quite mid-size. There were really fat kids in our class in grade that were really slow. They were definitely people who just didn't keep themselves up, and that is the stereotypes of like didn't bathe, didn't shave, wouldn't wash their gym clothes, would be the last person in line. I wasn't that. I mean, I was kind of uncoordinated.
You know, it's interesting because I've been talking about this a lot lately, and this is another one of those things where like people seem to like they really want to invalidate Trisha, which makes sense, right? I get it. Or they want to like talk shit and hate on Trisha. I get it. But they'll generally be invalidating to groups of people unnecessarily, right? So a lot of people like give Trisha a lot of shit. It's like, oh, she's so fat. Oh, Trisha's not that fat. Is she overweight? For sure. She's not that fat. And a lot of times people will talk about how fat she is, and it really screams to me like you just want an excuse to like hate on a fat person. Because like I get it, she's overweight, but like she's not that fat. And then I remember talking about this with Mama Gut on like a podcast, and people were like, "Oh, you're just projecting, blah 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 blah." And it's like, well, kind of sure. I guess people are projecting a little bit. Because yeah, I'm fat, so like yes, I'm kind of projecting. I guess it's like it's a little annoying. But
gym class, and I always kept myself up by like having nice things and stuff like that. So, but still, I was the one that got made fun of for being fat. People would always say Trisha has more rolls than a bakery. I just remember that one, and like a couple other ones just like making fun of me in a swimsuit. When I wasn't. You can find pictures of Trisha Paytas High School. I was just not fat. I was not thin. There was thin ass girls, but I was not thin. But I wasn't fat. I cheerleaded. I golfed. I was one that took 2 gym classes a day because I was trying to avoid math. Like, you know, like so I wasn't, you know, but I did. I felt fat, and people made fun of me all the time for being fat when there's people much fatter than me that they never pick on. I still don't grasp it. Like, I really wish I could grasp this part of bully culture, because it's like, because I know the cliche. I think.
And it's one of those things where, like, the reason that probably happened is because Trisha's kind of annoying, and people were probably, like what I was saying before, people were probably like, oh, you're annoying. And so when somebody's annoying, they're not just like an annoying person, they're like an annoying fat person. They're like, oh, like, you're not just a bitch, you're a fat bitch, or like, I'm a bald bitch, you know what I mean? So that's, I think, where that kind of comes from there with that.
My mom would tell me they're just jealous, you know, all this stuff. And maybe there is some, and ultimately I don't think maybe they're jealous of like my looks or who I am or whatever back then, but maybe they're,
no, probably not,
because I was fearless, I would wear crazy shit in my hair, you know, maybe they're jealous, maybe, or
it's
just
just, you're
some
just
weird
crazy
I'm not
shit in your
fucking
hair.
sure, but fats followed me my whole life.
This is the problem with Trisha. They are telling so many lies to the public that they can't keep their lies straight. Trisha's stories will either change each time they lie, or once in a while we will see Trisha from the older YouTube videos, and they will actually be honest with the public. This clip we just watched backs up the book, and it backs up the older YouTube videos. And in my personal opinion, that means Trisha was lying when they went on and on about never being bullied, and they tried to spin it into they were constantly being sexualized by teachers and classmates. So just to see what she said before, to refresh.
And those two things could have existed together, and this is like the enigma of the situation. And even me saying this, like, if Trisha watches this, all of a sudden this will be a new talking point. But it's quite possible she got bullied for being fat, and then she was also sexualized by her teachers, right? Because like it's not for nothing, but like it's quite easy to prey on a young person in general that is insecure about themselves. So it's quite possible that that actually happened. This person's dead. It's quite possible that it actually happened.
Your memory, and to show you some new footage that I didn't show in episode 1, let's take a look at a clip real quick to compare things.
I love when people call me, girls, do you see this? This is how I go out in public. I really don't like attention when I don't want attention. When I go out in public, I don't want attention. I don't want guys to look at my body. I don't want guys to look at my breasts, because no matter what I wear, I am sexualized. I've been sexualized from 6 years old. From 6! From being called out for being a distraction by teachers, to being molested by my neighbors, by people in power, people in authority, because my body has always just developed quicker. I was at home school multiple times not wearing a bra from the ages of 6 to 8. 6 to 8, you're in freaking kindergarten at 6. Like, what? They don't even make bras for those size girls. In middle school, I was the only girl not allowed to wear a 2 weeks when we do our 2 weeks from class courses because of my boobs.
So like, this is all over the place, because again, Trisha likes to use like modern narratives, and she seems to like to kind of like weaponize modern narratives. Like, it's multiple times where she's claiming she was trans and then been uneducated on it. And so, like, this idea that she was sexualized and power dynamics and all these are very new concepts that we've been talking about. And so it's quite possible that, you know, she's just writing the narrative. But when it comes to the people, where she's basically is talking about how people would patrol, or they would monitor what she was wearing in schools. Like, schools will do that. If you have a young girl that is, you know, developing and whatnot, and they're kind of like sticking out of their clothes, of course the teacher's gonna be like, hey, that's inappropriate, you need to get you need to fix this, that, or the other thing. And that's normal for teachers to do. Now, if your argument's like, oh, I don't think that you should monitor what young girls wear, then I think you're kind of a pedophile. But it's just because you can identify that something is sexualized doesn't mean that you are sexualizing the person. And I think that we have to understand that. Like, for instance, if a father was like, "Oh, I don't want you wearing that," that doesn't mean that the father thinks that their daughter is sexy. That just means that they're like, "Oh, I think that it's inappropriate that you wear that, and I don't want disgusting men to sexualize you."
I was told to put on shorts over my swimsuit because you could see it here through my swimsuit at like 11. And I
like that, like, yeah, like I could see why you would, like, yeah, you would probably tell a kid, "Hey, I could see your pubes through your thing, so put that away." Why would, like, that seems like a pretty reasonable interaction or reaction for them to have. So, what? So,
4 high schools. I changed 4 high schools because I wasn't bullied. I wasn't like a nerd or people were mean to me, but it was constantly that.
So what do you guys think? Does Trisha talking about bullying in the present time change your perspective on the situation if you were leaning towards believing what she said over the past few months? Also, I want to comment on one thing that was said in the clip that we just watched. Do you guys actually believe that Trisha got sent home from school from the ages of 6 to 8 for not wearing a bra? Some of this stuff is just common sense. First off, it's very rare for a child at that age to even have a chest. And also, what parent is going to come to school in the middle of the day to pick up their kid and take them home because the school said little 6-year-old Trisha couldn't come back until she put a bra on? You guys, as a parent, I would lose my shit on the school, because the first time would be the last time that was said about my kid. Trisha.
I mean, like, it's possible for young kids to develop. I think that, again, like, the general idea that's like, oh, this kid couldn't have developed kind of a thing, that, again, like, that's like a silly perspective to have. It is quite possible that she was developing more than other kids, you know? It's very possible that that happened. As far as the other specifics, I don't know how likely it is. I really do not know. We're gonna fucking die.
Just said this happened over a span of 2 years. It's just not a realistic story from so many.
Mama Gut's perspective was Mama Gut's perspective on that was like, yeah, I would tell them to fuck off. I kind of doubt that they were constantly telling her to stay home from school, but I don't really know. I'm sure they made comments about it, but
Angles. That's the thing with Trisha. They tell some pretty unbelievable stories that are clear-cut lies. But anyways, I just thought it was interesting that Trisha in the present time actually confirmed that they were bullied in school, even though over the past few months, Trisha has been trying to spin a new version of her life. So now let's talk about the copyright claim that was put on my first video.
okay, let's talk about it. I'm excited.
So most of you know that Trisha claimed my first video, which is a really shitty thing to do because if I didn't fight the claim, then they get all my ad revenue. But the interesting thing about this is the specific timestamps that Trisha claimed. And I believe Trisha claimed these clips because they're trying to erase what was said in the past about their teachers. In my mind, if you have nothing to hide and you're being honest in the present time, why are you trying to discredit your book? And why are you trying to erase the fact that you said nothing illegal happened with your teachers? So as you guys can see, there are 3 claims on this video. And the clips that Trisha picked were so specific. I had so many clips in the first episode. In fact, if you look at the description of my video, there is a list of all the videos that I pulled clips from to use in the first episode. I don't think what was chosen was picked randomly because all the clips are found in the beginning, the middle, and the end of the episode. So if you don't know much about YouTube copyright claims, one thing you can do to get your ad revenue back immediately is to edit out the timestamps that were claimed. And the 3 that Trisha chose would completely discredit my video if I chose to erase them. So the one at the bottom here, if you watch the first video, is the clip of Trisha talking about the car crash that she had in 2005. But we're going to skip over that one for now because it isn't as important as the other 2. The second one here is about Trisha's book. And this clip is where Trisha said that they were nothing but honest in this book. I'm going to play part of this clip just so you guys can see which clip I'm talking about. Here's the clip.
I mean, I'm nothing but honest in this book. And when I went to go write this book, I wanted nothing but honest, which is very hard for me.
This entire clip backs up how genuine.
I mean, like, it probably is a more genuine telling, but it could also, I mean, maybe she lied about it, and you never really know. Trisha just seems to be a consistent liar, so
the book is, and erasing this clip would discredit so much about the first episode because I focus so much on quotes from her book, and Trisha knows that. Now the next clip I want to look at is the puberty Q&A that Trisha claimed. Do you see the specific timestamp that is selected right here? What's interesting about this clip is that they were even more specific with the timestamp because in my video this clip actually starts at 32 minutes and 12 seconds, so there's about 40 seconds of this clip that Trisha cut off. I'm not going to play the clip that Trisha didn't claim just to save time, but if you don't believe me, you're more than welcome to go to the first video to see the full clip. But my question is, why not claim the whole clip if this was all random? Now I think it's because that specific timestamp that Trisha chose was to erase the fact that Trisha said in the past that nothing illegal happened with their teachers. And here is that clip.
It wasn't until my freshman year of English gym that I had a wrestling coach. He was our gym teacher and English teacher. He was so hot. He was premature gray. He was so freaking hot. Oh, I loved him. And I loved, like, I would always be like, I don't know, like, where do I put the heart? We had heart rate monitors. Like, where do I put the heart? Like, I was like the little memes. Like, again, no teachers ever did anything appropriate with me. Nothing like that. Like, I don't want to even, like, go there. My biology teacher my sophomore year was, like, my ultimate crush. Like, I just got so turned on by him. Like, so much. Like, I literally, like, got wet in the panties in class over him. He was so hot. And then my college teachers, I was just like teachers and like authority figures and like people who had control and who were educated. And
this specific clip here, when I seen it for the first time, I just immediately thought there's no way they are lying in this clip because Trisha literally lights up with joy talking about these teachers. And if you compare it to the clip that we watched in the first episode when Trish talked about her mom's boyfriend Tiger, just the tone in Trisha's voice, I felt how hard it was for her to talk about it. I wanted to show you guys the specific timestamps that Trisha claimed because I just think it shows that Trisha is trying to hide this. And hopefully once we get into talking about Mr. Raimi, you will fully understand where I'm coming from.
It's just so weird, like Mr. Raimi. Just call him Mr. Raimi. Like, just say his name. You know what I mean? It's weird.
So I know some of you are still having a hard time with questioning Trisha on the things that happen with their teachers. Trust me, I completely understand why. It's hard to question someone that is coming out as a victim. If you want me to be completely honest, I 100% believe Trisha when they talked about the water bottle incident on Frenemies because I had no reason not to believe her until I realized how much they actually lied and how much the stories didn't line up. Here's the thing with Trisha. They are seriously a pathological liar. They lie about things that are really small and they lie about things that should never be lied about. Trisha has no limits to the lies that they tell the public. The bigger the lie, the more attention Trisha gets. Trisha actually posted something on her Instagram that I found really interesting and I want to read it to you guys. The post said, emotional abandonment in childhood leads to insatiable hunger for attention in adulthood. It can feel like your need for attention is never satisfied, no matter how much you are actually receiving. Now, this post was actually in the last week or so, and it actually describes Trisha so well. In Trisha's childhood, they would lie and make up stories as a shield for bullying and to get attention and acceptance from their classmates. The stories and lies were harmless when Trisha was younger, but the more attention Trisha got, the more Trisha would push boundaries to satisfy the hunger for attention. But Trisha is still not satisfied even today because Trisha keeps making up stories or lying about serious things, which leads into some of the stuff I want to show you guys in this segment. One thing I want to point out before we get started is shortly after Trisha posted this, they ended up deleting it, which is very interesting to me as well. So let's talk about some clear-cut lies from Trisha so that you guys can see that they have no limits or boundaries to the things that they will lie about. I want to show you a clip that will lead into a recent lie that was revealed about Trisha. In a recent podcast episode that was uploaded on August 17th, Trisha was talking about their transgender video and their DID scandal. Check it out.
The first DID video and the transgender video, I was being really vulnerable. And to me, those were two things that are, why would someone want to fake it? That's the worst kind of attention you could have on you, because not only is that stigma that whoever you date, I was telling whoever you date, some people don't want to date transgender with female to male, and a lot of people don't want to date, especially if they're older and you want a relationship because of them, someone who's mentally ill, because it could be passed down to your children. So those are two things
So here's the thing. I don't like that argument from Trisha that's like, oh, I wouldn't fake being trans because, like, if I lied about it, it'd make me less dateable. That's my thing. Like, there is absolutely an argument for some people that don't want to date people with mental illnesses because they don't want to pass it on. And there's an argument to be made that some people don't want to date trans people. Sure. Absolutely. But see, this is one of those problems where even the way that Trisha identifies, and I think it's a dishonest identification, but even with the way that Trisha identifies, she would identify as somebody who, like, changes her gender identity. And so I don't think it's totally honest. I just took that kill. Oops. Sorry. But she doesn't have the same experience as somebody who you would say, like, medically transitions, for instance, right? She wouldn't face those same issues, and that's more of an issue that somebody who medically transitions faces, and that's somebody who has, like, a more, you would say, more severe or heavier identification with their transness, because it's much harsher. It's much harsher. It is much harsher because you're identifying, you're changing a lot about yourself. It's not as the same as having a frustration with the way that you express yourself solely, but then there's also, like, the medical aspect and, like, the pronoun aspect and, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of different aspects to it. And so, like, I just find it a little dishonest because she's able to kind of, like, she's not identifying in the way that's the most, like, harrowing or the most frustrating. And then she's saying that she identifies with it. I'm going to die. Oop, never mind. Hold on.
Wouldn't fake? Okay, I could fake being a Trump supporter. Give me that attention 1.4. I could fake being a Republican or something. I can fake being fucking bits. Men are better. They're superior than women. I can do all that. And then even that I stopped, obviously, because I just more good looks. But, like, to say I'm transgender, like, how does that help me at the time date? To say I have multiple personalities inside.
Well, I mean, like, it helps you on your sphere, which is on the online sphere, like, having something wrong with you, quote unquote, is considered a positive, because, like, it's like, oh, I see, I have this identity, I must be, like, I'm quirky. There are people who basically they're trenders in some capacity. They trend on issues. They want to have, like, this identification so that they can be like, oh, look at me, I'm a victim or I'm damaged in some capacity. That's what people do all the time, and she did it with DID. And I'm not saying that all trans people do that, or even that most do that. I'm just saying that, like, it's something that happens, and to ignore that, I think, is a little ridiculous. Because these talking points don't identify with her. She can't identify with these talking points.
I mean, not fully understanding, like.
You're right, Trisha. A normal person wouldn't lie about these kind of things or fake these kind of things. And right now, you guys, I'm just going to focus on the mental health aspect of what Trisha specifically said. Now, they specifically said in so many words that they would never fake or lie about their mental health. So if Trisha truly stands by the statement and faking a mental health diagnosis is off limits to them, then my question is, you guys, then why on earth did Trisha recently get caught for lying about their schizophrenia diagnosis? I'll tell you guys why. And that's because, in reality, Trisha has no limits to the lies that they will feed the public.
This one is, like, a little bit funky, though. I don't know if I necessarily would classify this one as a lie, and I'll explain to you why. Right, like, Trisha said that she had she has schizophrenia, right? She did say that because she was taking a medication that one of the things it treats is schizophrenia, and it's possible that she lied about it and over-identified with that thing, which I think is something that Trisha does just fundamentally. But it's also possible that she's just really dumb and thought that, like, having the medication meant that she got, like, a particular diagnosis. It is quite possible, and I'm just saying.
The bigger the lie, the more attention. And I truly believe the mental health lies is a way to excuse their shitty behavior. So before I show you guys how Trisha got caught in this lie, I want to show you what has been specifically said about this diagnosis from Trisha herself. Check it out.
And that's what scares me. And as I get older, like voices in my head and stuff really scared me. I had a therapist a couple months ago diagnosed me with paranoid schizophrenia, which is really scary.
I remember this. I guess I forgot about this.
I do have like problems. Like I'm a little like schizo and I'm a little borderline, so I have like problems. But I'm medicated for it.
What kind of medication you on?
There's this one called Calyptor. It's for schizophrenia. So it's like I don't hear voices or see things anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
So without that, you actually do have schizophrenia?
Yeah. So I got diagnosed this year with it, but like I honestly think it's something that like, got developed. Like I really do because I never heard voices up until like 32. I also was recently diagnosed twice.
Is that something that happens with schizophrenia? I should look into that. That you can develop schizophrenia, because I know that with autoimmune diseases, like it's something that can be triggered by like a stressful life event. But is that something that like generally happens? Like I don't know if it's true. Maybe it is.
This year, 2021, I'm on medication for it. Closely monitoring it for the first 6 to 8 weeks. I didn't feel a change other than not myself, and that was scary. But
so Trisha specifically said they were diagnosed twice. To get a diagnosis on any medical condition, you have to have testing to determine whether or not you have it or don't have it. Schizophrenia is not something that is easily diagnosed. From what I've seen online, there isn't just one test that determines you have schizophrenia. It's a very time-consuming process, which includes personality test, ink blot test, a full psych evaluation, full medical exam, blood test, just to name a few. So this isn't just something you show up at the doctor for it and they run one test and
okay, so usually it appears around your 20s. Okay. And Mama got saying that maybe her drug use would have suppressed it.
Later they tell you have schizophrenia.
That makes sense.
So the fact that Trisha specifically says they were diagnosed twice in a very short time span makes it pretty unbelievable. And it's unbelievable because this whole thing is a lie. On August 19, 2021, Trisha went live with Dr. Drew, and Dr. Drew flat out said that Trisha didn't have schizophrenia, and Trisha did not even challenge him when he said it. Check it out.
I understand you had a schizophrenia diagnosis at one time. That is not what you have. But I could see how if you have these kinds of symptoms, somebody might think that.
Well, they put me on medication for schizophrenia. I don't know, like if I have it, but that's what I'm on right now. And it's like this new. It's like I don't know.
No. You're having borderline. You should know this about borderline syndrome. But borderline, the name borderline was originally invented by psychoanalysts. It was like during the 50s or right before that. To what was borderline was they were considering these patients borderline psychotic, and so they were people that were having psychotic symptoms but were not schizophrenic. You understand?
Oh, okay. I remember hearing that, but I guess I didn't listen enough. So maybe she has something that would like something that would require her to see a therapist and get treatment, but not necessarily have, I've said that before, not have, the symptoms aren't serious enough for her to, be diagnosed with a particular thing. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. So Mama got saying here, it's like, oh, this part annoys me because I feel like it's a genuine conversation. Yeah, probably. This is probably a genuine conversation with Trisha. It's one of those things where I remember Dog like shitting on her for it, but it's quite possible that like, this was a genuine thing. And, this was like a genuine interaction from Trish, and we were all kind of just shitting on it because it's Trish, and Trish is a shitty person. Oh, I forgot I don't have my shit. Ooh. I think the game's over.
And so the psychotic symptoms can be helped with the antipsychotics. It's just part of the borderline process.
That's so interesting because I went, because my therapist can't give me medication, so I went to a psychiatrist, and it was just 2 or 3 meetings, and they were like, oh, you should be on this medication, and so it's helped with it. But so it's psychosis is part of borderline, because I thought it was 2 different like disorders. I thought there was like a psychotic disorder and a mental disorder.
No, it was originally called borderline psychotic. That was the original term. And because there can be prominent psychotic symptoms, but they don't progress, they don't go anywhere. They're just part of what and they can come and go, much like you're experiencing it. I'm wondering if maybe all your drug use didn't suppress that.
You would think Trisha would challenge Dr. Drew on this if they had 2 psychiatrists diagnose them with this disorder, but all they said is the doctor put her on the medication and followed that up with, I don't know if I have it. Trish, what do you mean you don't know if you have it? You specifically said that you were diagnosed twice. I wouldn't be surprised if Trisha isn't even on the medication that they claim to be on. I've seen commercials for this medication they claim to take. It's just interesting that it's a very well-known med that's on TV. But anyways, Trish ended up explaining herself on a podcast episode that was uploaded on August 24th, 2021. And this is what Trish had to say. Roll the clip.
So on that note, let's talk about me being misdiagnosed. Okay. I don't know if I've been misdiagnosed because I'm on medication that treats schizophrenia. So for me, I'm like, I'm schizophrenic. He's like, you're not schizophrenic. And I should have asked him to delve deeper because he goes, sometimes hallucinations go with borderline, and borderline, this is something else that I was totally misinformed. Borderline was originally borderline psychosis disorder or psychotic disorder. We changed it to borderline personality disorder. I don't know, to make people feel better, or just be like, you just have personality disorder. You're not psychotic disorder, which is like, I thought that was me. But because I was
so I mean, you didn't. Dr. Drew was just saying like, oh, it means that your symptoms aren't serious enough to get like some kind of a specific diagnosis. It's weird thing that she just made up in her head was like super bizarre. That it's like because we didn't want people to feel bad. It's like no, that's not what it was.
For twice to get this medication for schizophrenia, I was like, well, I'm schizophrenic. Like, I'm hearing voices, I'm schizophrenic. Shit. I'm in fact not. A lot of people have been saying that. So like, kudos to you for being an online therapist and knowing that before me. I honestly was just like, I'm schizophrenic. It's like, that's what it is.
So did you guys notice something significant between the Dr. Drew video and the clip we just watched? I will give you a hint. Look at these two screenshots. The one on the left is from the Dr. Drew video, and the one on the right is from Trisha's podcast. What looks the same? Y'all, she is in the exact same outfit, has the exact same hair and makeup, which means she filmed the podcast episode the exact same day as the live stream with Dr. Drew. Yes, Trisha uploaded this like 4 days after the Dr. Drew live, but it's pretty clear that she filmed it right after the live stream. So wouldn't you think if Trisha was diagnosed twice, she would follow up with her actual doctor and ask them questions about their diagnosis before filming it?
Well, see, this is one of those things, and I missed it because I was, when we were in our Trisha rage. Where like most things were valid, but we so that's the thing here is that no, because Trisha even said, oh, I thought I had this particular thing. You fucking help me, what the hell's the matter with this kid? Oh my god. Trisha even said like, oh, I thought I had this particular thing, and then she's like, oh, well, I got the meds, so I assumed that I was schizophrenic. She specifically made that point. So, like, Trisha didn't actually get a schizophrenia diagnosis, and she acknowledges that. She got medication for it and figured, oh, I must be schizophrenic. And, yeah, so, no, she probably wouldn't talk to somebody else because she never got the diagnosis in the first place. So then Trisha, to me, this kind of signals that Trisha is just really dumb and not that she maliciously said that she had schizophrenia. So then again, I remember the clip where like she took on the smelling hallucinations that she didn't have those and even said that she didn't have them.
Video telling the internet that they did not have schizophrenia. Also, wouldn't you think that Trisha would trust her own doctors more than a celebrity doctor that does this for entertainment? I know that's what I would personally do if I got diagnosed twice with a disorder like schizophrenia. But the reason Trisha did not do that, you guys, is because Trisha knows it's a fucking lie. When I saw this, you guys, I was pissed off because it's not cool to use mental health as a weapon on the internet. It's not cool to self-diagnose and exploit the illness to get attention and money. People actually have to live with mental disorders like this and go through serious shit like therapy and different medications just so they can hopefully live a normal life. It's not something that should be lied about and used as a shield to make people feel sorry for them and guilty to stop criticism. Remember Trisha's quote, if I make people feel guilty, I get things. Awesome. Straight from Trisha's book, this wasn't just a silly statement that Trisha thought in her childhood. It was a life lesson that Trisha learned from her own mother. And life lessons are something you hold on to in your adulthood. A good example of Trish using this fake schizophrenia diagnosis as a shield was when the BuzzFeed reporter was doing an article on Gabby Hanna. She posted an email she sent to the journalist trying to guilt her into not mentioning Trisha's name in the article she wrote about Gabby. Right here in the email, she specifically says, I just wanted to email you this morning and ask that if my story is published, please omit anything about Gabby Hanna. While you believe her to be a troll, she really affected my mental health back in January when I did her podcast, when she tried to convince me things happened, when they absolutely did not. And then she put in parentheses, triggered many schizophrenic episodes for me after, trauma dumped on me, and then recently started harassing me into thinking she's going to expose me. I want zero association with her or her name ever again. She needs serious help, and platforming her on any level is not something I want anything to do with. You know what happened when Trisha put all of this out? Their fans attacked this journalist because she ended up mentioning Trisha in the article. This is a great example of how dangerous things can get with the lies that Trisha tells. It causes a lot of hurt to a lot of innocent people. In fact, the journalist touched on this in a recent article about Trisha, and she said the following. Paytas didn't even want their name to be mentioned anywhere near Hannah's, an impossible request. A lot of Hannah's online fame at this point is tied up with her fights with Paytas. Paytas tweeted crap portions of our emails that made it seem like I had agreed to keep them entirely out of the
yeah, this is just like signaling that Trisha's a shitty person, sure.
Article, which I had not. For weeks, Paytas's most staunch supporters have been sending me doxing threats, suggestions I kill myself, demands that I be fired, racist jabs about my name and appearance, and suggestions that I could be sued for. My Instagram DMs, Twitter replies, and email inboxes are still filled with them. Despite Paytas's fury over being associated with Hannah in any capacity, they did recently go on Tana Mojo's podcast, Canceled, and once again publicly discuss Hannah and their ongoing feud. Trisha is a public figure. She can't dictate what gets written about her. When I seen all of this going down, I was in shock over the amount of people that were agreeing with Trisha and thinking it was okay to go harass this journalist. Side note, I don't care if you think BuzzFeed is a trashy outlet. Nobody deserves a hate mob sent their way, especially for just doing their job. It was in fact impossible to write about Gabby Hanna without mentioning Trisha Paytas, and I'm sorry, Trisha did that to herself because she uploaded so many videos and TikToks about Gabby Hanna over the past couple of years, and she still talks about Gabby Hanna every chance she gets, even though she acts like it's so bad for her mental health if anybody else mentions Trisha in reference.
Well, yeah, that's probably the reason that she probably does that, is because the reason that she probably does that is because Trisha like she plays this tactic where like when she's in a good spot, she'll go or when she's in a bad spot, she'll kind of like go after other people. So she'll be like, well, I know that I'm bad, but look at these people, which is like something that she seems to do historically. So. Fuck. All right.
to Gabby. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And while we're on the subject of Gabby, let's not forget that Trisha put out so many tweets mentioning the schizophrenic episode because Gabby was tweeting in response to a Frenemies episode where Trisha and Ethan talked about Gabby. This was way before Gabby's series was even posted. Trisha had her own fans afraid for her safety because Trisha was saying that she needed to go get help, even though Trisha was fine enough to leak voice memos and post all these tweets and upload a full YouTube video titled Gabby Please Stop, where she went on and on about how Gabby was triggering their schizophrenia. Oh, and by the way, you guys, these videos have been completely scrubbed from Trisha's channel, which is why the thumbnail images are so bad. I wonder why these videos are deleted. This is what Trisha does. They lie about their mental health and trauma to get attention and to make people feel sorry for them. It's just so messed up to me, you guys. Another thing that I found interesting about this whole situation with the schizophrenia was in a video that was uploaded a few weeks ago, she started talking about how her childhood trauma was triggering schizophrenic episodes. Check it out.
When I started therapy in 2019, like for real, it was about my breakup. It was what was happening in the now, which is like what I did. I used to do that for like a year. I got diagnosed with borderline, so I went to group therapy, talk therapy, and I'm getting diagnosed in 2021 and being on medication for schizophrenia. I really had a lot of other things to focus on, but I went through some childhood trauma therapy, talk therapy, talking about trauma I had when I was 6 that I've honestly blacked out, and that was a lot. I think that might have triggered some schizophrenic episodes. I'm not an expert, but I think it did. Because it did feel like my life, just like schizophrenia doesn't feel like my life. I don't feel like a schizophrenic. I don't think anyone believes it. I don't even believe it. But they're real, and my hallucinations, I need help for it.
This was just interesting to me, and I wanted to play it for you guys because the schizophrenia has been a lie, so I highly doubt she was actually talking about any childhood trauma in therapy. Oh, and this clip that we just watched was after the first episode of the series was posted. Trisha did this in a lot of YouTube videos after I uploaded the first episode. It was like she was trying to discredit herself, so just kind of keep that in mind too. One other thing I want to show you guys before we move on to the next slide, there was actually a recent contradiction from Trisha about the hallucinations that she was experiencing, and I want to show you guys real quick. Trisha went on a podcast called Trash Tuesday, and Trisha was specifically asked if she experienced smell hallucinations. Check out what she said.
Can I ask you about schizophrenia?
Yeah.
What are to what degree do you have like auditory hallucinations and
Both.
stuff?
I have auditory and visual, yeah.
Do you have smell?
No.
Then fast forward to a recent podcast episode of My Chemical Imbalance, Trisha contradicts herself and says this.
And so I've been sober since December 18th, and then he's like, that your drug use could have been suppressing voices, which was weird because it could also bring on voices from what I've read and stuff like that. So he's like, it could. So when he got sober,
Oh, it's so interesting because Mama got said that before she even watched that.
is when like kind of these auditory and visual hallucinations, and sometimes even like my smelling and touch hallucinations, like they're very real.
So yeah, on the Trash Tuesday podcast, Trish was specifically asked if they had smell hallucinations, and Trish said no. But fast forward a month later, all of a sudden they magically have them. Shocker, another lie from Trisha. That's the thing with Trisha. She will lie about the lies that she is telling because Trisha can't keep up with it all. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the voices and hallucinations were part of the lie as well, because a TikTok account recently found a clip of Trisha talking about how she would lie when she was younger about hearing and seeing things just so that she could hopefully get diagnosed with schizophrenia. Check it out.
When you're a kid, and I would just lie and make up stories every week to like counteract what I told them the week before, and they would like literally be like, and that's probably why they diagnosed me with schizophrenia, because I literally was like telling them one week, like literally, yeah, probably I lied a lot in therapy.
You guys, I literally just can't. Like, Trisha puts so much stuff on the internet that contradicts herself, and she leaves it up, and it's like she forgets about this stuff. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. But
Baby love, I want you to know your honest opinion. This is from Mama God. How much attention do you think Trisha is actually paying Mysterious? Do you think Mysterious is over personalizing it? That's a good question. Well, first of all, I do think that Mysterious is over personalizing it, and I think that when you do this type of like content, when you try to be as unbiased as possible, when you personalize it too much, he kind of fucks your shit. But I mean, I don't doubt it. I think that Trisha knows about Mysterious. Like I'm fairly certain about that. So I think it's a mixture of like both. I think that Trisha knows Mysterious, and she knows who Mysterious is, and she is trying to go after Mysterious to an extent. And yeah, I think Mysterious is taking it very personally.
by the way, this TikTok account is really good at showing contradictions from Trisha. I highly suggest you check it out on TikTok if you have it. I will link it in the description box down below if you're interested. But anyways, you guys, there's so much I could go into about this schizophrenia stuff, but I think that is enough to show you guys to prove the points that I'm trying to make. There's a couple more lies I want to show you guys before we move on to the next segment. Back in Trisha's older YouTube videos and Trisha's book, one thing that Trisha said that really stood out to me was that they would never lie about their family. Check out this clip.
I think my dad thought I was making stuff up, and even my mom. I don't know if anyone believed me, but stuff would go missing. But again, it's kind of the way pride was. You make stuff up. But I never did about my family. I think when it comes to family, real life, human relationships and emotions, I would lie more about stuff of like, oh, my dad's a producer, or I was actually in a movie when I was 5 and Home Alone, like that kind of stupid shit. It was never stuff that could like affect someone's life, especially with my stepmom, my dad, my mom.
So fast forward 5 years later, Trisha lied about her own father and stepmom. In the wrestling video that Trisha posted 4 months ago, they claimed that their stepmom forced Trisha's father to stop hugging Trisha because her chest was too big at the age of 8 years old. Check it out.
My own father was told by my stepmother from like at age 8 to not hug me because she thought he was inappropriate to feel my boobs. So I've never hugged my father since. Imagine not getting to hug.
I just feel like that. If that's true, that's your father's a dickhead. You know what I mean? Like I just feel like that's not true. That your mother said don't hug your daughter because her boobs are too big. I don't know, bro. Maybe it just seems a little preposterous.
Your father, because he's worried that other people think that you're like being sexual with your own daughter. My father, a Catholic going church guy, that's
Like, fundamentally, there are obviously things that you need to not do anymore as your child in general develops, right? So Mama got told this a funny story about her and her uncle, where they were ice skating before, and then like he was trying to like pretend to trip her, so he grabbed her by the shoulders and then like twisted her, and then her tits jiggled. And so after he did that, he realized what happened. He's like, we're never doing that again. You know what I mean? So like, that's one of those things where like, once you start developing, of course you should stop doing that. And that's like an honest mistake. But I'm not entirely, I wouldn't say that hugs fall under the same category, you know?
It's never done like a bad thing in his life. And I was like, are you freaking kidding?
Like, really fucking weird, right? What stepmom is going to forbid someone's father from hugging their own child? It doesn't make any sense, but I will prove this lie in just a second. But Trisha even blasted her own father and stepmom on a Frenemies episode the week after she uploaded the wrestling video.
Sorry, I don't love you anymore. Your boobs are too big. Exactly, yeah, dude.
So the Frenemies has 4.7 million views, and this is what Trisha said. Check it out.
Like, even today, like just anything. Well, not just you, but like anyone like was scared to touch me. Like my dad didn't want to hug me because my stepmom's like, she has boobs, that's inappropriate. And I was like, why? Like it's the thing about like being a girl at like 9 years old, you have big boobs, and your dad won't hug you because you're
like. I wonder if part of that's true in some capacity. I just feel like the hug thing doesn't make sense, but there must have been like a thing that they did together that would be appropriate for a young person, but not somebody once they started developing. And Trisha just got upset, like I don't know. Something. I just don't know what it would be.
Your stepmom's like, that's inappropriate.
I mean, that's
you know
your
what I mean?
family being fucked
So
up.
it's different. It's totally different. Like with you and whoever, you don't hug me, don't hug me. I'm not a huggy person anyways, but it's just like, it's just.
So first off, it's just weird for Trisha to spread around this type of information about her own father to millions of people. I get that.
See, that's another one I missed. What stepmother would stop a father from hugging their child? Like, I understand, but I don't like the tone. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Step-parents are shit. Yeah, that's true. I wonder what happened. Like, because it's hard to take Trisha at her word because she's a shitty person. So that's why I think that's the biggest problem is that there's so much lying around everything that Trisha says. She tends to over-exaggerate stories. So like it's quite possible that something happened that her stepmother said you shouldn't do this anymore. And it could have been borderline inappropriate, or maybe it was just slightly perceived as inappropriate. But I don't think it would have been hugging. Maybe they were like sleeping in the same bed together, which is like common for adults and like their kids. Like, hey, come sleep with me tonight. Not like in a weird way. Maybe that was what happened. She's getting old. I don't know. I'm just speculating. It's just hard to tell what it is because there's so many lies surrounding the scenario in general.
That she hates her stepmom, but this makes Trisha's father look bad as well. First off, in Trisha's book on page 4, she talks about how good her father was about not introducing them to a bunch of different women. And this was taking place around the age of 10. She specifically said in a span of 7 years from the ages of 3 to 10 that their father only introduced them to 2 different women. And the girlfriend that Trisha's father had when they were around the age of 10, Trisha actually liked her. So based on Trisha's book, I don't think her father was dating his current wife when Trisha was 8 years old. So if they weren't even dating, how can she tell that he isn't allowed to hug his own daughter? Like, it makes no sense. Trisha's dad didn't marry his current wife until Trisha was in the 8th grade, which would make Trisha around 13 or 14 years old when they got married. And until that marriage, things were so laid back with Trisha's father. He did anything that Trisha could ask for. It wasn't until that marriage that things started to change a little bit for Trisha. And when I say change, I mean like normal rules that most parents discipline their kids with. But
yeah,
to take it one step even further,
Trisha got upset because their mom was like, you need to start, a stepmom, whatever, you need to clean your room, like that kind of shit, and like do chores around the house. And Trisha came from her house with her mom where the mom let her do whatever she wanted. And so like that was what Trisha had a frustration about. So
there's a quote from Trisha's book that I showed in episode 1 about the court hearing where Trisha had to testify against her own father. As you can see at the end of the quote, it says, he hugged me and said everything was okay. So right there is proof that he hugged her since she was 8 years old. But let's take it a step even further.
Well, I feel like, okay, let's say that the hugging thing is true, which I don't believe it's true, but let's say it's true. If the dad decided to hug her after like that type of a scenario, like after she was like, did something like really crazy, like that would be a general exception to the rule, right? Like we're hey, you shouldn't do a thing. And then what the fuck just happened? Oh. That's fucking confused the shit out of me. I wouldn't say that invalidates the statement. I just think that it's preposterous because Trisha's saying it.
In a Q&A that Trisha did with her mother, Trisha talks about kissing her family on the lips. And in this video, she specifically says that she still kisses her father on the lips as an adult. Check it out.
Maybe that's what the stepmom had a problem with. Maybe because that's like something that'll happen. Like, you know, when your kid's a kid, you'll kiss them on the lips, but then they get older and then you no longer kiss on the lips. So maybe the stepmom is like, hey, she's too old now to kiss on the lips. That makes sense to me. Maybe that's what it was.
Because my mom and I kiss on lips, and this one comes up all the time in like vlogs. They're like, why do you kiss your mom on the lips? It's so gross. And they say that about my dad, I kiss my dad on the lips. I don't think I've ever vlogged that, but like I kiss my brother on the lips. Like people think it's disgusting, and I'm like, what?
Yeah,
so I guess why do you kiss on the lips? Like why was that a thing?
Okay, well, how sad, first of all, you guys think of it as a kiss between parents and a child, because for me, and I grew up this way, if I have unconditional love for someone, like my mom and dad always kissed them.
Yeah, that makes sense. So maybe they were kissing on the lips, And then the stepmom's like, that's fucking weird, rightfully so. And then she's like, you need to not kiss your daughter on the fucking lips anymore. That's creepy. Stop. That makes the most sense. And then Trisha turned it to a hug because she knew that people would perceive it as incorrect. Like they would disagree with her. So she's like, oh, the stepmom stopped me from kissing on the lips. Blah, blah, blah. Like that's bullshit.
On the lips. It's just a little more personal, and it just says, I love you. I love you. I'm here for you. I wouldn't do it to anybody. If I love someone, I'll kiss them on the lips. I think lips are very, what do I want to say? A personal thing that you should only give kisses out to those people that you really love.
Yeah. I feel like that too. I feel like because even my dad or my mom or something, like, yeah, definitely not something, but for me, it's like you said, it's like a way of being like super close. Like, I don't know, you just like can tell that they love you when they kiss you on the lips and stuff, and I feel like, I don't know, I think it's such a personal thing because you don't go around kissing everyone on the lips, and I feel like with my family, we just always have. So I feel like it's weird if you don't. I feel like it's weird that you think it's weird.
So let me get this
That's
straight.
very
So
weird.
Trisha can kiss her father on the lips, but she hasn't been able to hug him since the age of 8. That makes absolutely no sense
That's true,
whatsoever.
yeah.
If Trisha needs to drive a point across to her audience, she will even lie about her own family because she has no limits to the lies that she will tell the public.
Well, like I said, I think the kissing on the lips thing, that's what it is. Like, I think that because most of the time, Trisha's stories will be like rooted in some form of reality, not a heavy reality, but like some form of like reality where it's like that could have happened in some capacity, but it's just like, it's like a preposterous fucking like movement to get there, you know? And so I think that's what this is.
All right, you guys, I got one more lie to show you before we get into the real serious stuff. So Trisha's new podcast is really revealing a lot of lies and contradictions about Trisha. And they recently revealed another lie that was in the wrestling video from 4 months ago. Yes, we're going back to the wrestling video one more time. So there was a part in the wrestling video where Trisha said that they were gaining weight on purpose to turn men off from them. And this is what they said. Check it out.
Because I thought at this point, I'm like, people are done sexualizing me because so many people call me gross and stuff like that. It's because I really truly feel in my heart and sabotaging my weight loss and stuff my entire life, like never wanting to lose weight. Like I talked to therapists about it and all that stuff. Is I truly feel I don't want any more attention on my body. I like having extra weight because it turns off a lot of men, and that's the truth of it. Like the only way the motion stopped when I was a kid was when I started gaining weight. And I remember I went away for the summer with my dad, and I came back to school, and that same person, my abuser, was like, "You got too fat," and I was 10, and I just kept gaining weight because I thought it would turn men off from me. And I still feel that way because as much as I've capitalized and made money and profited off my sexuality, and I own it because when I'm in control of it, I love it and I think it's a beautiful, powerful thing. But when I'm not in control of it, it really makes me feel some type of way. And I think that's what started my gender identity issues because
Yeah, and that's the thing right there. Is like that's what we talk about with Trisha, where she's like, oh, like I was eating to gain weight, blah blah blah. Like that's another new age narrative, like a thing where people are like, yeah, I used to eat to gain weight to be less attractive. And so I doubt that Trisha actually did that. I'm sure it was comforting, but I doubt that she ate to gain weight. Because again, back when just before we were talking about it, like it's possible, I said that the two things could exist at the same time. Like it's possible that she was made fun of for her weight, but then also sexualized by like teachers. Because again, if you have like a predator type person, they're going to go after people who are more vulnerable. People like, you know, younger women that are overweight tend to have issues with the way that they look. And so those two things can exist. Like that's not mutually exclusive, but that would completely discount the whole narrative that like, oh, I gained weight to be less attractive because like, again, that was the part that would be in this theory making them even, you know, do it in the first place because she was like had self-esteem issues. But yeah, Trisha just likes to like ride new age narratives, and that what happens is that like this whole thing now she's saying like, yeah, I think that's why I was identified as trans, but you know, since this is not true what you're talking about, it invalidates what you're saying because it's not a true statement. So it invalidates what you're saying right now. Yeah, because like, oh, I have gender dysphoria because I used to have like an unhealthy relationship with food. But obviously, that's not.
I never looked at myself as sexual. I never wanted.
If you're lying about that.
So according to Trisha, in this clip, they sabotaged any weight loss as a kid. They actually gained weight to stop from being essayed. And even today, in the present time, they gain weight because they don't want the attention. And if you watched episode 1 of this series, you know that some of the stuff that Trisha's saying in this clip is already a lie. But in a very recent podcast episode, Trisha actually elaborated more on this, and they said the complete opposite of what they said 3 months ago. Check it out.
When I was a child, like, I wanted to be anorexic. Like I wish I could just stop eating. Like I wanted to look skin and bone. I still want to be that weight loss story that people congratulate me for losing weight. Whether that's healthy or not, I'm telling you right now, I'm not healthy.
Seems genuine because that's a common perspective for fat people.
My entire life. And that
myself,
sucks because there is some self-hatred there. When I'm being 100% honest with myself, I want to be skinny at all costs. And that's why I say I wish I could just not eat. If someone were to ask me, like right now, you could be 120 pounds if you shave, but you're going to lose 15 years of your life, I'd be like, put me on 120. Give me that 120 scale, read. And that's so fucked up it's so fucked up because I want kids and I'm willing to risk 15 years about my future children because I want to be thin. And if I'm being honest,
that's one of those things though that I'm pretty sure that she made a point that like she can't have kids, like she's infertile because of, I think, syphilis, right? And so it's like a weird point to make. It's like, well, I want kids, but like how much of that is true that you can't have kids if you keep saying you want kids, unless you're just fucking delusional, which is true. But you know, it's just hard to figure out what's the lie. You know, is the lie that she can have kids, or is the lie that she couldn't have kids in the first place? You know what I mean?
Like, I want to be thin for that wow factor. I always thought, what's the one thing I can do that keeps shocking people? I've already done this, and this. What can I do? You know what really shock people? I come back with a 100-pound weight loss. Whoa, she did it. So I lost 30 pounds in high school, and I did it 5 days a week. I would drink just some fast. This was also doing my 2 gym classes. I would drink just some fast.
Or I just tell you, when I was younger, I did something similar. I would just drink a Diet Coke at school, and it had like such a negative. I would just have a Diet Coke, and obviously you're not eating enough. So what happens when you get home? You get home and just fucking eat more. That's what ends up happening in those scenarios. But it's like so funny. This is a fucking story. When I was younger, I remember being at school, and like somebody was like, "Oh, do you want a piece of gum?" And then I was like, "No, thank you." Like, "Oh, you should really have it because your breath stinks." Because my breath smelled. Because I was fucking... because I was only drinking Diet Cokes. And you know how you have that hungry breath? Like where it stinks a little bit? That's what I had.
During the week, and then Friday night, my mom would come home from her shift. She'd bring back a Taco Bell. And this was my splurge.
Nice.
And so I wouldn't eat all week. I would literally have... No, I'd have 2 Slim Fasts a day. I'd have 1 in the morning, 1 at night. That was it. It was for some fucking play I was doing. I think it was
and then you have
Sling
Taco
Fever
Bell.
or something at fucking Pecatonica High School. And it worked. Oh my god! And my teachers are like, "Oh my god, like you're losing so much weight," and it felt fucking phenomenal. Like I felt so cool. I was like, it was everything. I was like, hell yeah.
Just so many lies and contradictions, you guys. I actually think this podcast episode Trisha posted recently was pretty honest between the weight loss, and this is actually the episode where they talked about the bullying that we watched earlier in the video. So the point of showing you guys these lies again is to show if Trisha can lie about all of these important things that normal people wouldn't normally lie about, then Trish can also lie about SA experiences with their teachers. And I question them because there are so many contradictions between the actual stories she has been telling and what they have stated in the past. Before we get deep into that, I want to play a clip from a YouTuber named Brittany Simon. She talked about Trisha's SA stories and she put it into perfect words that I completely agree with. Check it out.
The people who got upset with me for saying I don't believe Trisha Paytas' sexual assault stories. Now this is specific. It's not that I don't believe all of them. I just don't believe most of them. And I believe Trisha is a liar based off of what we know her to be, which means if she can lie about all of these very important things, I don't know why you wouldn't make the logical leap that she would also lie about her sexual assault stories, especially when she throws down celebrity names and then doesn't go into detail because it's too intense. No, if
that's true. Like she will. There's this trend of Trisha talking about when people pass away, all of a sudden she's had an experience, whether it's inappropriate or not. So like, oh, she had an experience with like Robin Williams, you know? I had an experience with Robin Williams, or I had an experience with Hugh Hefner, or I had an experience with Michael Jackson, or I had an experience with so and so. You know, there seems to be a trend of her having an experience with somebody who passed away, and then she doesn't elaborate on it at all. I remember there's another one. I just don't remember specifically who it was.
offense, as a sexual assault victim myself, like I personally have the belief system that we need to be very aware that people will use this for clout, and also that sexual assault victims aren't being heard and they are being ignored. 2 realities can exist at once. These tiny life contradictions.
Yeah, Will Smith. She said something about Will Smith like having inappropriate like interactions with her own kid or something like that. I don't remember specifically what. Or no, not her kid. A dancer, like being like gay or something. Something like that. Like there's always like a fucking allegation.
Do exist at one time, guys. Just because, okay, you don't want to fall into the number 2 bubble of thinking, oh, all people who claim sexual assault are always telling the truth, and all people who claim sexual assault are lying. Like, these are 2 black and white. Like, how do you not know that both of these can exist at once? Maybe you've never experienced it, but I have. I've had to go to court for it. Like, I completely understand what it's like to face somebody who's just blatantly lying about something. It is very devastating. So here's the thing, though. Trisha exists in a bubble where people allow her to do this.
I just thought Brittany explained this so well, I wanted to include it in this segment. So now let's get into the timeline of Trisha coming out with their essay experiences with their teachers, which will lead into the allegations against the teacher that was never arrested. On October 22nd, 2020, Frenemies number 7 was uploaded. This episode was shortly after all the stuff with Moses came out. The pictures of the bruises on Moses' arm were public, and Trisha was getting backlash for laying her hands on Moses. The next episode, we will be talking about Moses and Jason. So
Will Smith assaulted one of her backup dancers.
Focus on that right this second. But what I found interesting about this episode is Dr. Drew was talking to Trisha about what happened with her and Moses and asked Trisha if she is in therapy for it. Trisha proceeds to tell Dr. Drew that she is in therapy, and Dr. Drew says, well, you know, this kind of behavior is a sign of severe childhood trauma, and asks her if she's talking through that in therapy. And I want you guys to listen to what her response is. Check it out.
Working now on it, and it's like a thing that's like super sensitive because I've never gone that far, you know, and I've gotten help for the past year because I had 2 mental hospital stays where I was put on a 5150. So like I go into these like
These states.
yeah, like it's like a blackout where I'm like not that person.
Yes.
And like that was the first time that happened. So now that that's out there on the internet, like everyone thinks that's just me, that I just like abuse people, and it's like it's never been that far.
Right. So let's be clear. It's very much the same thing. Those blackouts or whiteout or red outs that people get when they hurt themselves and other people.
Yeah.
And it needs to be treated. You're treating it. I mean, that's the thing. Now it's also a sign of like really heavy duty childhood trauma. So
like, just kind of imagine it was a guy though. Like, I'm not trying to be that guy, but like, it's like, oh, it's just like a childhood trauma kind of a thing. You know what I mean? Oh, what the fuck? Anyway, it's like, oh, like I get it. Maybe it is, but it just feels like we're too sensitive to the, you know, you've kind of abused your partner. You know what I'm saying? It's like a little bit of a weird thing to be super empathetic towards them. Although maybe the perspective is, I guess he could handle it, something like that. I don't know.
You getting that treated too?
Not so much yet. I mean, because I had my blackout moments where I woke up and I was like, I didn't want to do that.
No, I
don't
understand.
know.
I get it.
So,
and so that's
I don't want to do that. I don't want to hurt anyone, even in my relationship now. I am trying to like sabotage a ton of
Like,
class because I don't want to be harmful to anybody, and I'm dangerous to myself, I'm dangerous to other people, and it's bad. You know?
Like, imagine like crying because you hurt someone else. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, you just should be like, all right, chill out with the waterworks. You know what I'm saying, girl? Like, that's what you're a little too much, a little too extra.
So if you go on to watch this for 5 more minutes, Dr. Drew then asked Trisha if Moses is going to therapy with her so that they can both work through their emotions of what happened when Trisha hit him. And Trisha then completely contradicts herself from what she said 5 minutes earlier. Check it out.
Yeah. But Trisha, you guys getting together therapeutically?
We have it, and it's more just because I do talk a lot about like childhood trauma that I don't talk about with anybody on YouTube. I kind of don't want him to know everything, because like, a lot of my parents, like both my parents don't really know all of it. So it's just something I don't want him to know right now.
Okay, that's fine.
So why would you say specifically you don't talk about childhood trauma in therapy, then 5 minutes later say you talk a lot about childhood trauma? It doesn't make any sense, you guys. In my personal opinion, I believe Trisha saw this as an opportunity.
I think that she was saying that she doesn't talk to Moses. Did I hear that right? Didn't she say, like, I don't talk to Moses about childhood trauma? Like, that was what was actually being said, right? It wasn't that she wasn't talking about it. It's just that she didn't want to talk to, like, Moses or her family about it. Did I hear that incorrectly? Or... because I think that's what I heard. Right? Fuck it. YOLO.
To tell stories about their childhood that would make people feel guilty about being mad about Trisha hitting Moses, because it was shortly after this podcast episode that Trisha started telling the internet these stories about their teachers. And after doing more digging after the first episode, the first time Trisha brought this up was actually on TikTok. I thought it was frenemies, but I did a lot more digging, and I'm pretty sure this was the first time that she talked about it. Now, just a disclaimer, Trisha has thousands of videos between TikTok and YouTube, so it is possible that I missed something, but I have done a ton of research, and this is the first thing I can seriously find. Plus, Trish said in the Dr. Drew episode that she had never talked about it online before, so I'm 95% sure this was the first time that they brought it up. And we'll get deeper into this TikTok once we start talking about Mr. Ryan. Now, one other thing that Trisha specifically said in the Dr. Drew episode was that her parents didn't know a lot about this trauma, which is why Moses doesn't go to therapy with her. So one thing I want to point out right now is if Trisha's parents truly didn't know about any of this trauma, why would you talk about it online versus telling your family first so they don't find out from a YouTube video? That's an absolutely awful way for your parents to find out.
So first and foremost, if you're a sexual assault survivor, your parents aren't the victim. And I say that because it doesn't matter how your parents find out about it. That's not irrelevant. That's not relevant, you know? Right? So like the criticism of like, oh, if you were sexually assaulted and you didn't tell your parent, I think that's kind of shitty, because it's not easy to tell your parents that you were sexually assaulted. And for Trisha having a very bizarre perspective on life, I could definitely see her seeing it as more comfortable to express her assault to like people on the internet, especially back when like YouTube wasn't super popular and people didn't really watch it. So that's probably why she did it. She's like, oh, people aren't really watching anyway. Maybe she never thought her parents would find out about it. But like the way that your parents feel about your sexual assault isn't really relevant. It's the way that you feel about it. And it's not, I don't think it's uncommon for survivors to like not tell their parents. I mean, that could be a very like intense thing. And especially since the conversation can be shifted in a way where it's like the parents are the victims. And that's never what you want to express. You know, you never want that to be the main focus, because that's what happens a lot of times. It's very difficult, you know, when you love somebody who's a survivor. A lot of times you'll personalize it, like, oh my God, you might get angry. And it might take away from the helping experience of the individual that needs help, you know, as a person, like the actual victim. So, this guy's fucking pissing me off.
doesn't make any sense. I know you guys will probably say, well, maybe she told her parents before uploading the videos. And I would normally agree with you on that if Trisha's mom didn't specifically state in the BuzzFeed article that was released about Trisha recently that she was finding out about a lot of this stuff through Trisha's YouTube videos. And this is what was said in the article. Yet throughout all their controversies and challenges, Paytas has seemingly shared more with their audience than their own family. Lynna told me she actually learned a lot about Paytas' life from watching their YouTube videos. Even now, Lynna and Paytas have yet to have a conversation about their history of addiction or their mental health. Quote, I don't know, maybe we should be more open, end quote, Paytas said, holding their mom's hand. Quote, she had hid a lot from me until later, Lynna said, and then I knew, and I'm like, that would have broken my heart if I had known some of the stories, end quote. It's just all so strange. Trisha seems close with their family, and in the Dr. Drew episode, she seemed like she was trying to protect them, but instead of working through it in therapy and maybe having your family in therapy with you and talking through it that way, you tell all these stories publicly and have your own parents find out through YouTube videos. It's just all so weird to me. So now that you know the timeline of when Trisha started talking about this publicly, let's get into the allegations of Mr. B.
See, these are those situations that are like, you know, you shouldn't have included this because this is invalidating to sexual assault survivors. Like that is something that like a sexual assault survivor would not express because there's like, why would they? You know, like that's not something, you know what I mean? Like there's no playbook on how to deal with your trauma. I suppose there can be a little bit. I don't really know. Going to therapy. But the reason I say that is because like, you know, this would be like there's too many rules, I think, from Mr. C's perspective, you know?
Now, before we get into all the clips that were put out during Frenemies, Trisha has talked about this teacher once before she started changing details of the story. On May 26, 2020, Trisha did an episode of her old podcast, The Dish with Trish, with her sister Callie. This episode is titled Sister Sister. What's interesting is after the original upload of this video, Trish scrubbed the podcast off of Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but there are still sites where these episodes can be pulled. In this podcast episode, Trish and her sister talk about two teachers. One of them is Trisha's 6th grade teacher, and the other one is an 8th grade teacher. Trish specifically says that neither teacher did anything to her. She does say that one gave her a bad vibe, which was the 8th grade teacher, but nothing ever happened. Check out what they say.
But you know what my secret was? I had mom's water bra.
Oh, yes.
Remember that? My mom had a bra that had water in that. We were like,
where
fight over it. We don't make those.
Because we had no, well, you had
lopsided. Mine were like saggy.
I had no boobies.
But then you could tell it was fake because like obviously you couldn't see the real boobs. Like it was just all bra. I remember wearing the water bra in 8th grade, and I will not say this teacher's name because it's weird.
Yeah.
But I remember like him just like always hating me, like he only like popular kids or whatever.
Didn't he, like read your shirt.
Yeah. Okay, that was a different story. But he read my shirt one time. He's like, oh, like what's your shirt say? Like can you come closer? Like it felt weird about it at the time.
Good.
But no, I remember it was like everyone was on a field trip to fucking Springfield or some shit, and so I went to school and he was one of the people that were like watching us or whatever. And I remember I had the water bra, and he's like, Trisha, he's like, can you just stand up to talk to the class? And he never stood up to like talk.
To the two people in the classroom. Oh my gosh, how traumatic for you.
He goes, and I remember
a shimmy. What did he do?
Oh, worse. I just remember him being like breathing so heavy. And I was like so confused because I was not.
I wonder if he's on
sex.
OnlyFans.
I hated this teacher. I did not think he was cute. I didn't.
You'll have
I
to tell me after.
No, he was
I forgot
just.
which
You
one
don't
this
know?
was.
Oh, I feel like yeah. He wasn't like a perverted. Well, maybe obviously he was. But he wasn't like.
Okay, I'm going to stop for just a second. There are a couple things I need you guys to put a pin in. Trisha specifically says in this podcast, quote, I remember wearing the water bra in 8th grade, end quote. And then she goes into talking about this other teacher. Side note, some people hear her say 9th grade in this clip, but to me it sounds like 8th grade. But regardless of which grade she said, I want you guys to remember that this teacher she calls out by name was not teaching at her school in 8th grade or 9th grade. The water bra is a specific part of the story that you will see in the clips that I will show later. And I think this is really important to remember that Trish used to specifically say that the water bra came in around her 8th grade year. Even in her book on page 6, she specifically says, quote, 8th grade was upon me. This was the year of sex bomb Trish. I wore heavy eyeliner, cheetah print pants, different colored hair, and my mom's water bras. I wanted attention and I was going to get it, end quote. So put a pin in this because we will talk about this later. Now, the other thing I want you guys to remember is Trish specifically said that this teacher was just creepy, but doesn't say anything happened. Now, in the next clip, she goes on to talk about a 6th grade teacher that was allegedly arrested for CP, which is the teacher she called out online. Listen to what she specifically says. Check it out.
There was a teacher in 6th grade that got in trouble for like child on his computer, but that wasn't the same one. Yeah. Do you remember his name? I guess I don't know.
Okay, wait a minute. Before I finish this clip, did you guys hear what Trisha said under her breath to Callie? She asked Callie if she remembers his name, and then she goes on to say, I guess I could say it, but I don't know it. Listen to it again. Check it out.
Do you remember his name? I guess I don't know.
This is just one of the many things that don't line up with the story. If this person did something to Trisha, how would she not know his name? That's just really odd to me. But moving on with the clip, Trish goes on to say that the teacher liked her, but that was it. She didn't say anything about him doing anything to her or anything like that. Check it out.
Do you remember his name? I guess I don't know. Yeah, he did get like arrested for it, but he was in 6th grade. He was so creepy, but he like liked me in 6th grade, which makes sense because he's a fucking creep. But he like child.
All right, you guys, that's pretty much all I wanted to show you. Now let's move on to the stories that Trisha put out about this teacher during Frenemies. One thing you guys need to understand is how much the story has changed over the past 9 months or so. Now this is a small re-edit of this video since the other one was taken down because of a privacy claim. I decided to add in clips that were found after the original video was uploaded. The TikTok that is up on the screen seems to be about the same teacher, or it may be about a different teacher. There are so many stories that Trisha has put out publicly. This TikTok was uploaded on November 22nd, 2020, and it says the following: middle school teacher putting hands down my underwear regularly and threatening to unalive my family if I told anyone. Now, this is pretty extreme considering later Trisha's stories that she put online after this are completely different than this TikTok. Then the second time Trisha talks about this teacher was in a TikTok that was uploaded on December 4th, 2020. They do not name the teacher in this TikTok, but the details are extremely important when comparing it to the other times that she talked about this incident. I'm going to read each slide of this TikTok. She starts off by saying, 6th grade teacher known to be mean to everyone takes a liking to me and gives me the nickname .com. She then goes on to say, we start playing games in class that requires heads down to not cheat, and he stands behind me the whole time and rubs himself on me. And then
yeah, it's so funny because she was talking about heads down 7-Up or whatever it's called. And what's so funny about that is I remember Mama Gut said something because she was like, oh, he would do that when they're playing heads down. We were playing heads down 7-Up or heads up 7-Up. Everybody calls us like a little different. And what was so interesting about that, she's like, yeah, but aren't there 7 kids that have their heads up, like putting the thumbs down of the other kids? You know what I mean? And I was like, oh shit. It blew my fucking mind. It was just so funny.
She goes on to say, eventually starts putting hands up and down and inside me, and the students report this. She then continues by saying, principal punishes me by switching my classes and telling me I'm no longer allowed to show my arms or legs, and that they need to be covered at all times. She then goes on to say, teacher finds me and gives me kisses on the lips to apologize. And then the next one says, takes pics of me naked in his classroom and told me he'd even send them to Playboy even though I was 12. And then it finishes by saying he gets arrested for having CP on his computer at work. One thing I want to point out before we move on to the next video is that in the comment section of this TikTok, and there's thousands of comments on this TikTok, you guys, there were 2 separate comments that were left by 2 separate people on 2 different days. And the one on the left, it says, somehow this same story is on Reddit and has been for a couple years from a different person. That's suspicious. That's weird. And then the one on the right, which was posted the day before the other person, they said, okay, but 3 years ago, I saw the story on Reddit and it wasn't from Trisha. Now I tried to find this Reddit post, but it's honestly looking for like a needle in a haystack.
Like, yeah, no, I don't doubt, I don't doubt she lied about that, you know? That quite possibly could have happened, but I don't really believe Trisha in general for a lot of these things. Like I said, it could have happened. What's more likely is that there was a rumor about this teacher, and there's rumors about all the teachers in school, like whether they're true or not. And then Trisha found that out, and so she's like, oh, well, there's my bit of truth that I get to work off of, and now I get to say that this whole thing was true,
So this is just speculation that she pulled this story from Reddit, but given all the other evidence that's in this video, I wouldn't doubt that she pulled details from someone else's story. What I've noticed with Trisha when she lies or makes up stories, she bases the lies off other people's stories, or she pulls it from like TV shows or movies. That's what she would do when she was young, when she would make up stories. She would base it off of something that she had seen, and she would spin it into a lie to tell her classmates.
A lot of you guys also confessing your lies. I remember another one of my lies, and it was in the 5th grade, and I said I had a twin, and her name was Trixie, and she lived with my dad in California, and that Trixie was really skinny and pretty, and that she was currently on a Disney Channel show under a different name. And at the time, there was a show called So Weird, so I was like, I was explaining the character of Fiona on the show, if you guys remember Fee, but like without saying too much, and where I was from Illinois, like people just, they didn't really know about anything, but yeah, it was Trixie, and it was like the Parent Trap in my head. So Trixie went with my dad, and I went with my mom, and I had that lie for a long time, and I don't know if I ever got called out on it, but I guess good liar.
Sorry guys, we're going to take a small detour here, but I want to play 2 other clips for you guys that really stuck out to me. The clip we just watched is just one of the many times that Trisha would base her lies off of TV shows or something that they had seen. Well, recently Trisha has been talking a lot about how they don't even know who they are and they don't know their own identity, and that they use pop culture to base their life on. It's just really interesting because I personally think a lot of Trisha's stories and experiences that aren't actually hers, especially the recent trauma, is based off of stuff that she has seen online or on TV or in magazines. This isn't her 100% admitting that her stories aren't true, but I just found these clips really interesting, especially because people did comment on that post that it was someone else's story off of Reddit. So check out these clips and you'll see what I'm talking about.
I'm so influenced by pop culture because I have no identity of my own. This is the true thing. I never had an identity growing up. I have an identity disorder. So I think I don't know who I am. So I become other things and other people. Probably why I cosplay and dress up as other people, because that's who I learned from, is movies and TV. I really don't know who I am as a person. So it's sad and exciting at the same time.
Watching these videos, and again, I explained this where it's like, and like I watched it and I was like Britney Spears, I didn't watch Britney Spears, I want to marry her. I didn't want to be like her friend. And that's how I feel with like Jarway. She was like, I watched him and I just wanted to be him. And I wanted to be something, I wanted, in high school, I wasn't anything. I don't know my identity. I still don't know my identity. And that's the scariest thing, not know who you are or what you like. I just know I find comfort in things. I know I see things on TV and I want to be that. And I like model my life after that. And I find things to imitate my life because I don't know what I like. So like we're watching Darcy and Stacy. This is a show on Discovery. And it's about these 2 twin sisters who've dated a lot of foreign men, and now they're each married to foreign men, and they have this like these thick Eastern European accents, and like it reminds me a lot of me and Moses. Like the girls remind me of me, and the guys remind me of Moses in like this weird way. It's like you watch that, you're like, no, not so whatever. Like I watch it, I'm like, okay, this is my life, but it's not. But I'm modeling it that because I don't know the structure that my life is supposed to be without seeing something on TV. And like
this is just like pathetic that it's sad that she's like identifies so heavily with like that like shit going on. It's just fucked up.
I love being in Moses' culture because it gives me some sort of identity. Like whether he identifies as Israeli Jewish, like maybe not, but that's why I like learning about his water philosophy too. I just like to learn what his identity is, right? What he grew up with, because I just don't have that. My identity is pop culture. Anyways,
Trisha growing up didn't find her life interesting, which is why they made up so many stories, because they always wanted something more. I seriously think a lot of Trisha's lies are always based on something that Trisha sees. But like I said, I just found this really interesting. So let's get back to the stories about Mr. Then on January 16th, 2021, Trisha talks about this teacher again. She does not name the teacher, but in the description of the video, she urges people to look for arrests for CP in Byron, Illinois. The TikTok says the following: 6th grade teacher touching my boobs and kissing my neck when we were told to put our heads down after finishing our test. Then in the description, she also says the following: he ended up getting busted for looking up illegal CP on the internet at school. And then in parentheses, it says, look it up.
Well, that's interesting. So now it's like from a test, and then she originally the narrative is that it was from the game. It's all over the place.
Byron, Illinois can kiss my ass. There is no rest that exists online for this at all. This TikTok has over 7 million views. Then the next time Trisha mentions this teacher is on January 19th, 2021 in an episode of Frenemies. And this is the episode where it was all about Hair by Jay, Shane Dawson, and Jeffree Star. Now in this episode, Trisha specifically calls out Mr. by name, and this is the first time that she actually names him publicly. Please keep in mind that this podcast has 4.1 million views on it, and here's the clip.
I remember I was going to class with like this teacher that was like forcing himself on me and stuff, and I was just like, how does someone believe me? The principal, like nobody. It was like really weird, and so I think from that, like,
did that guy eventually did anyone eventually give you?
Not funny, but like my 6th grade teacher, yeah, I talked about it on TikTok, the one that used to me would play like heads down, and he'd come around and like grab my breast and like put his hands on me. He did get arrested. His name was Mr.
Because of you or because of other incidents?
So someone else came forward. I never did.
Gross.
But he had child on his computer at the school.
Oh my God, nobody
Mr.
believed you?
Byron Middle School, and I did say something originally, and like no one believed me. It happened again my 8th grade year. No one believed me, and I was just like, but that guy did. He did get arrested, and I don't know where he is now, but he did. Yeah.
Now we are going to keep moving through these because there are so many of them, and at the end of all these clips I will summarize the differences, but I'm sure you guys can already see the details that change with each clip, especially when she talks about how it was reported and what happened. Then on February 19, 2021, Trisha posted TikTok talking about this teacher again, and this is what Trisha said. Check it out.
I was in the 6th grade. I used to wear water bra to school. I'd sneak my mom's water bra to school because I had uneven boobs. One was a B and one was a double D. I was really insecure about it. Then
did she have a B and a double D? That's pretty different. The fuck?
One day my creepy teacher called me out in front of the class and said, hey, your boobs look like they grew overnight. And I said, yes, I have a deformity, so I have a water bra on because I had no filter back then and I overshared even when I was just a 12-year-old. So then he said to see him after class, and I saw him after class. He said, you can't wear water bras to school, and he wouldn't tell the principal if I took it off. And I said, fine, I'll take it off. And I was going to go to the bathroom. He said, no, you can't go to the bathroom. You got to take it off right here. So I took it off in front of him, to which he decided to feel at my shirt to make sure there wasn't any other bras and to make sure my deformity that I said that I had was real. And he said, I think your boobs are perfect the way they are. I was 12.
Out of all the stories, this one.
Wow, that's pretty fucked if that's true. It's so hard to believe Trisha Paytas on literally anything. That guy's dead, so fuck him. It's hard to believe for when it comes to like anything though, because that's a very detailed and graphic story. It's terrible. I don't know, you know? It's just like, it's Trisha, so it's hard to believe what she has to say. Oh, I'm fucked.
To me is completely different than any of the other ones, but let's keep moving. Then on March 2nd, 2021, Trish talks about this again on an episode of Frenemies. Check out what she says.
It's crazy. I had an incident happen in middle school where a teacher like groped my boobs all the time when we would do like heads down, 7-Up. And so when I finally went to the principal about it, he told the principal, well, she's been wearing water bras, so she's been asking for it. Like, it's been teasing me. And the principal's like, have you been wearing water bras? I'm like, yeah.
Say what? And the principal was like receptive to that
yeah,
argument?
and he's like, have you been wearing water bras? I'm like, yeah. He goes, okay, well, let's not wear water bras to school. And like, that was my fault because I wore a water bra. I mean, there's been more like that.
Dude, this world is so fucking crazy. What is a water bra?
A water bra it was my mom's. It was a bra that, it was like water.
You fill it with water?
No, it already had the water in the bra. It was very heavy.
Oh, and you were wearing those at what age?
Like 12. Because I had uneven boobs, so I was trying to even my boobs out for real.
And he said...
He would come feel it all the time because we play that game like heads down, 7-Up, whatever. And you have to like put your head down. Or when you were done the test, but whatever. And so he'd come around like always like groping whatever. And so I finally... He did get arrested. This guy actually did get arrested, but later on. But me, they were like, well, she wears a water bra.
So this next clip that you're getting ready to watch...
So it's like, yeah, it's kind of all over the place. Like, you know, she... I don't know, man. Because the story obviously changes and gets fucked up, but when I'm listening to this, I'm trying to figure out what's the truth part. And so, like, it's possible, though unlikely, that, you know, your teacher would like feel up your tits in class and everything and this and anything. What makes more sense is that the teacher had like, I don't know, maybe they had like an inappropriate interaction that wasn't an intentionally inappropriate interaction or something, or the teacher might have done something like, I don't know, maybe he hugged the students and she had big tits, so it was like weirdly inappropriate. And I don't know. It's like, I'm not even about speculating because shit's all over the place.
Watch is another new clip that I did not have in the first upload. But one thing I want to point out real fast is after the first upload, Trisha deleted thousands of videos on her channel, including videos of her talking about these different incidents. So this next clip, I don't have a thumbnail for it, but I am 99.9% sure that the clip you're getting ready to watch was a video that Trisha uploaded the same day that David Dobrik posted his first apology video on the Views channel, which was on March 16th, 2021. I'm pretty sure that the video Trisha posted was titled something like David turned off comments, but I won't. Now in this video, she talks about this teacher again. And what's interesting is in this this clip, she claims that this teacher was the first teacher that ever did anything to her. I want you guys to put a pin in this because later when we talk about the other stories, this gets confusing because according to her other stories, this wouldn't be the first teacher to do something to her, which is another change in the story. I know this gets all really confusing. I'm going to try to summarize it for you guys when we get towards the end of this, but check out this next clip.
My first offender, when I was in the 6th grade, in Byron, Illinois, there was a teacher, and it wasn't until a couple years later that he got arrested for CP on his computer at school. And I said something and people didn't believe me. But I wish I would have fought harder and said more.
Once again, Trisha claims this teacher was arrested for CP. And I know we haven't made it into the details about the teacher yet, but I want to stress to you guys, this teacher was never arrested for CP or any other crimes. Now, the most damaging video that Trisha uploaded in regards to this teacher was on TikTok on March 19th, 2021. This time, Trisha encourages her followers to search the teacher and look up his arrest. This TikTok has almost 1 million views on it. And this is what she said. Roll the clip.
I've always been vocal on social media because I was silenced. Not to give a silly reference in this, but I was silenced for so long at my school growing up. I had 3 different incidences with 3 different teachers in regards to SA, R word, and M word. It happened in the school, and one principal didn't believe me. 2, I was too scared to speak up, and 3, the teacher said I was asking for it. So it was looked over. The one that I was too scared to speak up on, someone else spoke up years later and he ended up getting arrested. Byron, Illinois. Look it up. His name is Mr. Riney for looking up CP at school.
As of October 9th, 2021, this video remains up on Trisha's TikTok. I just want you guys to keep that in mind. Now, before this video was uploaded the first time, Trisha knew that this video was coming because I talked about it in a live stream vaguely. So Trisha talked about this teacher a couple more times and made the story even more confusing. On her podcast titled My Chemical Imbalance, she talked about this teacher again on August 17th, 2021. And this is what she said.
But with the teacher who he abused me when I was in the 6th grade, he ended up going to prison for CP on his computer and ended up dying. And so you're just kind of okay, well, he did get his. But at the time when I had turned him in or talked about it, I was told I had to literally switch classes because I was told that I lie.
All right, you guys, I got one more clip to show you and then we'll get into the summary of everything. So this next clip is from Trisha's podcast and it was uploaded on September 8th, 2021. Pay attention to what Trisha says because she actually...
You know what I think is that the problem, one of the energy problems with the video, obviously there seems to be a lot of personalization for Mysterious, but I think part of it too is that this video came 5 weeks after the other one first went up. And so I think it would have been better to just make a new video, edit a few little things, put the video up, and then make a next part that had the extra whatever hour of information or so. It doesn't have to be it's an hour or 2 hour long documentary to be something that's revealing about it. Because I don't know, it feels bizarre. And maybe it's because we've all just kind of realized Trisha's a bad person and a liar. And we I don't know.
He tries to change up the story to make it look like there were 2 different teachers, one that died and one that went to prison for CP. I want to stress to you guys that the teacher she accused of CP passed away in 2019, which we will get to that. But this video came out shortly after the original video I uploaded. So I think it's just interesting that she tried to change it up and make it look like there were 2 different teachers. Check it out.
The book she wrote 10 years ago contradicts almost everything she said about child and grew up. The book I wrote 10 years ago, I'm 23 years old. I'm protecting everything. I'm writing my own story. That's not reality. I was so scared. I was so scared of the people who abused me. It took one of them to actually die for me to feel some sort of relief, and another one to get to go get.
So it's because there could be a level of truth to her lying about some things because she was younger and didn't want to expose everything. I mean, that's not an uncommon thing. I think that the thing is that we don't give her the benefit of the doubt, which makes sense because she doesn't deserve it, and so we assume everything she says is a lie. And it's one of those things where do I think everything that she says is a lie? No, I don't. But there's no way to actually figure out what is and isn't true because of how much of a liar she is, and that's the problem really more than anything else. Is that she's a lying person. Well, fuck, I'm dead. And so we don't give it the benefit of the doubt, and we basically that's what happens when somebody does something like that. You assume that they're always lying about everything,
Get charges pressed against him for me to go back and say something and at least make something right.
So let's break this down really quick. I won't be able to hit on each discrepancy because there are so many, but I'm going to summarize everything the best that I can so that you guys can understand it better. On May 26, 2020, Callie and Trisha are laughing about 2 teachers that were creepy in Trisha's middle school. The 8th grade teacher with the water bottle was a completely separate teacher from the 6th grade teacher that Trisha claims was arrested for CP, which is Mr. Riney. Trisha couldn't even remember the 6th grade teacher's name, and looking at all the allegations that are against this teacher in all the clips we just watched, I do not see how it's possible for her to not even remember his name if this was all true. And Trisha claims that nothing happened with either teacher, that they were just creepy to her. 6 months later, on November 20th, 2020, Trisha claims that her 6th grade teacher put his hands down her pants and threatened her family if she ever spoke up. No mention of a water bra, and seems like she never told anyone of this happening. Then on December 4th, 2020, this was the TikTok that was extremely detailed that might be a story from Reddit. The major points in this TikTok is Trish specifically says multiple students reported it. She claims that she was punished by switching classes and she could not show her arms or legs anymore at school. No mention of a water bra or people not believing her. January 16th, 2021 claims the teacher kissed her neck and touched her chest during a game of Heads Up 7-Up in a classroom full of students.
You know what's possible? That she might have accidentally touched her chest during that, and then maybe they asked her to cover up or something. I don't know. I'm just it's all over the fucking place, you know.
And urges people to look up an arrest in Byron, Illinois, but no mention.
Yeah, like I don't even like the way that I'm talking about it. It's just one of those things where it's such a sensitive topic. It just feels invalidating to even like express that perspective.
Of the teacher's name. On January 19th, 2021, on Frenemies claims nobody believed her, even though previously she claimed students reported it, and that it happened during a Heads Up 7-Up game and he grabbed her chest. She does name the teacher and the school and says that he was arrested for CP to millions of people. On February 19th, 2021, this TikTok was so different from all the other ones. She claims that the teacher made her come up in front of the class and the teacher commented on her boobs in a classroom full of students. The teacher made her stay after class and made her take off her water bra and felt her chest when they were alone. On March 2nd, 2021, on Frenemies, she claims it was during a game of Heads Up 7-Up and that she did tell the principal, but only this time the teacher actually admitted this to the principal, but the principal told Trisha she could not wear water bras anymore at school, even though she previously claimed that he said she wasn't allowed to show her arms or legs. On March 16th, 2021, claims the teacher was her first offender, which means this is the first person to ever do this to her, even though Trisha has multiple stories at younger ages that we will get into later in the video. And once again, says the teacher was arrested for CP. On March 19th, 2021, Trisha claims she never spoke up about this incident ever and urges millions to look up the teacher's name and town for an arrest that does not exist. On August 17th, 2021, claims once again that the principal made her switch classes when she reported it, but it was only because she lies and he didn't believe her, even though previously Trisha claimed that the teacher admitted this to the principal. And lastly, on September 8th, 2021, claims that it wasn't one teacher, but it was two teachers, one that died and another one that got arrested and is in prison, even though the teacher she named online died in 2019 and was never arrested in his entire life. So basically, none of the story makes any sense. Major details change every single time. One thing I want to say really quick before we move on is I understand that SA survivors have issues in remembering things that happened to them. I understand this is very common, such as getting timelines wrong or what you were wearing or certain parts of the assault, but I want you guys to understand this entire story is never the same and this story was built on a lie. When I'm showing you guys each detail of this story, I want you to absorb each piece before you make any snap judgments, because I just want to remind everyone I came to my conclusions based on all the evidence in both of my videos. Please look at the situation as a whole and don't focus on one specific thing. Okay, so let's get deeper into this. So Trisha specifically says that this teacher has been arrested. It seems legit, right? Surely if Trisha is encouraging their audience to look this up, it would pop right up when you search it. That isn't the case at all. In fact, when you Google exactly what Trisha says, this teacher does pop up under the top results, but it isn't because he was arrested. It was because he passed away in 2019 and his obituary pops up when you Google what she says. And just a side note, I will be blurring out Mr. Ryan's picture in this video, but I have to refer to him by his name because that is what Trisha made public. I'm going to try to respect Mr. Ryan's privacy as much as possible in this video while showing you what I have to in order to prove his innocence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you exactly what pops up when you search exactly what Trisha says. As you can see in this screenshot, I typed it exactly the way Trisha worded it. Byron, Illinois, Mr. and that was it. So the top results are a couple different things. This obituary is about the teacher that Trisha is talking about, and we will get to that in just a second. But do you see the article that is at the very top here? Look at the headline. Middle school teacher pleads guilty to CP charges. This is another reason I showed you guys all the clips. First, because Trisha specifically says in several of the clips that this was her middle school teacher and that it was in the 6th grade. This headline is about a middle school teacher that was arrested for the exact same thing Trisha claims. So when you click on the article, I'm expecting it to be about Mr. Of course, and that's not the case at all. First of all, when you click on the article, it's behind a paywall, so you can't read the article unless you subscribe to the website. And luckily, I paid the $1 fee so I could show you guys this article. The only two things you guys really need to focus on in this article is the name of the teacher and the school. The name of the teacher is John Byron Schulich, which isn't Mr. Riney, and the school is Bull Run Middle School, and that middle school is located in Virginia. So I just find it funny that this is the top search that is behind a paywall, so you can't really read what it says unless you pay for it. And the headline of the article before you click on it is exactly what Trisha claims. Now, that is just a pretty big coincidence to me. Now, all the other articles that pop up around this search, every single one of them is from different schools and different teachers, but the other articles around this search aren't as specific to what Trisha claims, like this particular article that I just showed you. And if you don't believe me, I encourage you to look it up for yourself. There is nothing surrounding any essay with students, with any teachers from Byron Middle School or Byron High School that I could find on the internet, and I have searched high and low for anything related to this. The only thing that I could find was a lawsuit that was filed in 2019 against the high school because of a coach that was allowing hazing. Outside of that, I couldn't find nothing. If you choose to look into this further, just keep this one thing in mind. If you come across an article that is titled Byron Center High School, that is not the same as Byron High School. Byron Center High School is located in Michigan, and Byron High School and Byron Middle School is located in Illinois, which is where Trisha is from. Now let's move on to Mr. Based on everything that I have researched on Mr. He was a very, very, very well-respected person and teacher. Byron, Illinois is a very small town, and before we go any further, I have confirmation that Mr. was teaching at Byron Middle School when Trisha was in 6th grade. He was also a teacher during her 7th grade year as well. The reason I know this is because I had someone that went to middle school with Trisha who wishes to remain anonymous that reached out to me, and they had copies of her middle school yearbooks, and they sent me pictures. This is the yearbook from her 6th grade year. Here you can see Trisha pictured, and you can also see Charlie Riney was a teacher during this time, which matches up with the obituary that comes up online. Like I said, I'm not going to show his picture to maintain the little privacy that he has left, but this should be enough confirmation because there is no other teachers with this last name Riney that was teaching while Trisha was at Byron Middle School. Now moving on from that, this is a summary of Mr. Riney's life. He taught at a ton of different schools, including both Byron Middle School, Byron High School, which is where Trisha grew up. But as you can see here, there are several other schools listed because this man was a teacher for 47 years. He didn't stop teaching because he got arrested. He stopped teaching because he retired. This man is also a Vietnam War vet that was honored with a Bronze Star, which is a high, high honor. If you don't know what a Bronze Star symbolizes in the Army, here is a short summary of what it means. It is the 4th highest ranking award a service member can receive.
I feel like this is the part people are upset about. I don't know why she left this in.
For heroic deed performed in an armed conflict. For those who receive a Bronze Star medal, it is a signal of their sacrifice, bravery, and honor while serving their country. The other thing I want you guys to focus on is the awards that this man has gotten as a teacher and a coach. His obituary reads as, some of Mr. Riney's awards and recognition include 7 varsity letters in basketball and track with Loraz College, 5 times being included.
Like, I understand being misinformed on like these types of very complex conversations and stuff because I've been there too. But I feel like we're reinforcing the same point that people were very upset with in the first place, and it's like his accolades are irrelevant to his like character when it comes to, like, it is relevant to your general character, but this idea that like, well, they're a good person so they couldn't have done it, it's just not good. It really is just not good.
In the who's who of American teachers, twice being honored by the Western Illinois University as a highly motivational teacher and placement in Newman's Athletic Hall of Fame. This man had a wife, kids, and grandchildren. Mr. Riney had a great impact on a lot of people, and I want to show you guys the kind of impact that he had on these people. And I want to tell you guys right now, the comments that I'm getting ready to read are only a small portion. There is hundreds of comments that I found online, not only on his obituary, but on a posting that I found when his health was declining. And all of the comments were so positive and uplifting. You can tell that this man has touched a lot of people's lives in a positive way. Prayers to Mr. Riney, one of the greatest teachers I've ever had. Multiple times throughout my senior year, after having a good basketball game, Mr. Riney would write me a card explaining how proud he was.
This actually, I don't think that this was in here the first time, this specific thing where they were talking about the specific positive things. I don't remember if it was or wasn't. But like, this isn't it, man. This is really not it. Like, this shows a fundamental lack of understanding about sexual assault survivors. Like, hey, he was a really good person. It's like, okay. I mean, really good people can still do really bad things, and if you assault somebody, you're a bad person. I'm not saying he did it. What I'm saying is that this is not a way to discount what he did. Like, this isn't the thing that you would focus on. This isn't really a point that you would make. So
of me and how great I was doing. He'd keep them in the principal's office, and during his class, they would call me down and give it to me so that I could come back to his class just happy and grateful for someone to notice my achievements. Amazing teacher and an even more amazing human. He will be missed. Prayers your way. Please tell him that his book was amazing. I love reading about his life and the famous people that he has met, played against, and fought while he was in service. You have made a huge impact on many lives. Mr. Riney, you were one of my favorite teachers. I learned so much from you, and your impact lasts still today as I continue to love learning. Prayers for you. And here are several more if you want to pause to read, but like I said, this is only a small portion of the nice things that were said about this man. There are hundreds of comments about Mr. Riney. And the last thing I want to show you guys before we move on to the next thing is a comment thread that I found on the TikTok that Trisha originally posted. And somebody replied with Mr. Riney, Charlie Riney, the high school teacher. And then one of his students replied with, no, he was one of my high school teachers, a great man, Vietnam War vet with a Bronze Star, all around lovely teacher person. And then the other person replied with, I can't find any charges at all. He was last teaching in 2016, got ill, and died in 2019. She should not say he was arrested. And then the other person replied back with, my class threw him a retirement party. I cried when he passed. He was beloved.
Like the argument of like, hey, he never passed away, or he passed away, he didn't get fired. That's a good argument because she lied about that. But like to say that he was a good guy, I mean, this is not
at our school. I never heard a bad word about him. So confusing to me. This man was so well respected by so many people, and his background shows how amazing his life was. But I want to make a few things crystal clear. I'm showing how well respected this teacher is for a few reasons. One, because of his background and how established he was. If at any point there were allegations.
Hold on a second. I gotta go to the bathroom. Give me 1 second. I'll remember where we're at. See if you give me 2 seconds. Oh. Alright. Sorry about that, guys. Let's get back into the news.
Against him to the level that Trisha claimed there would have been something somewhere online. Trisha makes it sound like this teacher was so reckless, and when a teacher has sick tendencies like Trisha described, they do not stop this behavior. He would have been caught eventually, especially because it's
dude, this is not good. No, this is, she's made it worse. You've managed to make this argument worse. Like, this is actually getting annoying now. Because the first time when she was like, oh, he was a really good person, so like if he did something wrong, blah blah blah, I was like, okay, you just don't really understand. And you misspoke. But now we're doubling down. It's like, oh, well, he was a predator, so he must have gotten caught. If he was a predator, he would have gotten caught eventually. What? How? No. What are you talking about? That just shows like a fundamental lack of understanding. Most of the people that I've experienced who have had these types of experiences, no, they were never caught. This is not good. This makes it really bad. This is really bad.
Sounds like he wasn't even being careful with his behavior at all. And a story like this would have been all over the news because it would have been a shocking story. And
if it happened, it would have been, or if he got caught, it would have been all over the news for sure. But what we're doing here at this point is we're saying that because he didn't get caught, it couldn't have happened. And so since that, like, you know what I'm saying? This is just not good.
A small town like Byron, Illinois. The second reason is his military achievements would have been stripped from him if he got caught at any point.
Okay, but again, like we would go under the assumption that he didn't get caught. He may, I don't know that I think that he did it. I don't think that he did it. He might have though, right? Based on a lot of the other situations surrounding it, right? However, this is just a generally invalidating perspective where it's like he couldn't have done it because he was like a nice guy and he would have gotten caught because, you know, he sounds like he wasn't being careful. It's like, well, what are we talking about here? This is insane.
To tell a massive lie that he was arrested for CP to millions of people makes me so sick to my stomach because the man is deceased and he can't defend himself. So I understand that just because he was a good person doesn't mean he couldn't have done bad things. That is 100% true.
I don't think
but given all the evidence in both of my videos, nothing connects to each other. So if none of this is true, it makes the situation...
Well, right, but it's not... I don't think that you do understand that a good person can do bad things because a big part of your argument is that, well, I know, like, is that like he couldn't have done it because he would have got caught. And that doesn't, what are you talking about? It doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't think that you do understand that. I think you heard that point from people. They were like, hey, just because some people think somebody's a good person doesn't mean that they didn't do it. And you doubled down and then you said, like, I know that you have this point that you're making, but I'm just not really going to truthfully and honestly engage in it. Or it's kind of shitty.
Even more sickening because this teacher's reputation will be forever damaged because he has no way to defend himself or fight back. So those are the reasons why his background was so important to show. But we are going to take this a step further because I'm going to cover every...
Not really. That one was pretty bad. That was pretty bad. You really should have just not even thought. You should have just said like, hey, sorry, I didn't mean to be generally invalidating. My bad. And then you could just moved on. Or you could have just removed it in general and just like, okay, you know, bad take. That's fine. No problem with that. Not everybody, you know, if everybody fucks up, but that was bad.
Angle of this. Now, some people disagree with me showing statistics, but I feel the statistics are a massive part of this story and it needs to be talked about. Given the stories that Trisha has told and how careless the schools and the teachers are, I find it pretty unbelievable that Byron does not have one story online with essay between a teacher and their student. Trisha claims that this happened to her 3 separate times with 3 separate teachers, all in Byron, Illinois. And when we get into the next...
Right, but we're operating under the assumption at this point that, like, she's either lying about all of them or telling the truth about all of them, when it's quite possible that she's, like, lying about some of them. Oh, fucking asshole. Oh. Anyway, so maybe she's telling the truth about some of them. I don't really know. But the statistics, again, like, oh, you know, because, like, let's just say it was one person. Maybe she exaggerated and said it was multiple people, but it was really just one person. You know, that's quite possible. And now we're like, yeah, it couldn't have happened because, you know what I mean? It's like, well, it's a really safe town. Statistically, it's a very safe town, so this couldn't have happened. It's just not a good point.
Segment of the video, you will learn that Trisha has more stories outside of these 3 teachers. So in reality, she has made like 5 or 6 different claims with teachers only, which makes it even more important to look at the statistics. Now, I completely understand that maybe somewhere in the world this has happened to someone in a small town. I want you guys to understand that this is just another piece of the story that doesn't make sense. And I'm not talking about anybody but Trisha, because when you're in a small town like Byron, Illinois, the odds of 3 teachers having these tendencies is pretty slim, especially in a
again, though, it could have been like 1, you know what I mean? Like maybe because we know Trisha over embellishes, so maybe one of the stories is true. We don't really know. But maybe one of the stories is true, and so now we're throwing out like generally invalidating rhetoric. It's like, oh well, you know, what's the possibility that it was 3? Well, what's the possibility that it was 1? I don't think that it's super unlikely that a small town, where everybody knew each other, would. I don't think it's impossible that they might be like, oh well, he was a nice guy. I don't think he did that, and like let him get away with it, you know. So.
With no history of something like this happening. So let's get into it. Trisha claims that 3 separate incidents happened with 3 separate teachers when she was in Byron. According to the TikTok that she posted back in March, she specifically said in that TikTok that it happened in the school she grew up in. Let me give you some background information on the town of Byron, Illinois. I looked up the crime rate of Byron, Illinois, and Byron is one of the safest towns to live in. In fact, Byron has an A+ crime rate and is safer than 78% of the cities in the USA, which means it's a pretty fucking safe town. In Byron, you have a 1 in 1,196 chance of becoming a victim of a violent crime. So statistically, I can see something like this happening one time to someone in a town like Byron, but 3 separate times by 3 different teachers to the same victim, it just seems impossible to me.
I mean, it doesn't seem that impossible to me. I don't know. You know, you might believe it's a little far-fetched. Sure, whatever. But just fundamentally that, like, oh, because everything was statistically safe, that means that there can't be shit going on in the background that we don't know about, I think is just fucking ridiculous. Can I be your Among Us Baka slave? Very nice. I don't know. I don't know. It's just, it's reading poorly to me. This is reading poorly.
Especially because there is no trace of any essay by a teacher in the town of Byron. When stuff like this happens in a town like Byron, Illinois, the media would be all over it. Just to compare things, I live in a town that also has an A+ crime rate.
Oh, maybe the media
Byron
in
is ranked 4% higher than my town when I looked it up to compare.
This really just shouldn't have been in the video. You could have removed this whole part and it would have added, like, this could have just been removed.
This is just something you guys are going to have to trust me on. If you want to believe me, you can. If you don't, I totally understand, because I'm not going to put where I live on the screen. But if you call the cops on the smallest thing in my town, they send the whole police force, because that's how bored the cops are in my town, because there's very little crime. And it is very rare if a hardcore crime happens in my town. Like I said before, I could believe one time this happening to Trisha, because in my school growing up, there was a teacher sleeping with a student. This happened around 1998 in my town. And before it got back to the principal, there were rumors that went on for months that this teacher was hooking up with a student. Well, the guy that was sleeping with this teacher, one of his friends ended up telling the principal. And once the principal found out about that teacher, she was put on suspension while the school investigated it, and it didn't take long after that the police got involved and she was put in jail. We were all over the news, you guys. It was everywhere because it was shocking. And ever since that one incident in my town has happened, there hasn't been another one since, and that has been 20+ years, you guys. So when you compare it to a town like Byron, Illinois, I just don't see how it's possible, because Byron is safer. So statistically, it just doesn't make any sense with what Trisha is saying at all. Look, there's too many things that don't make sense with this situation. I understand the mentality of the internet is to believe all victims, but sometimes people lie about this sort of thing, and that is one reason why it's so hard for victims to come forward and to be believed. On one hand, we got this well-respected teacher that was a war vet, that earned a Bronze Star, that earned multiple teaching awards, and has an entire community of people that have...
It sounds like she's like doubling down on, like tripling down on it at this point.
Nothing but the nicest things to say about him as a teacher. And then on the other hand, we have Trisha Paytas, a person that is known for lying, a person that lied about their childhood, saying that they were never bullied in school, and that it was actually that they were being overly sexualized by teachers in school, and that was the main problem growing up. The thing about it is, you can be...
Like, this puts a bad taste in my mouth, man. Like, this really puts a bad taste in my mouth here. Like, Because now it's like, look at this person. The reputation of this person is so much better than this other person. So then, like, obviously they're telling the truth. Like, that's what people, like, that's what you'd say to, like, a fucking poor person. It's like, well, they're poor, so, like, they couldn't have done something. Like, that's the type of rhetoric that gets people away with allows people to get away with doing terrible things. You know, and yeah, that's a good point. Maybe she has to look up the stats from 20 years ago. I doubt that they're any different, but like, that's a good point. But still, I mean, this is just like, it's not good. It's just not good. Because it's
bullied and still go through trauma. So why would Trisha lie about the bullying if she was being honest about all of this? And they have stated multiple times in the past that nothing illegal ever happened with any teachers growing up at their school. They have lied about so much, you guys, and I could list everything. And
I mean, so, and listen, not to give Trisha too much benefit of the doubt, it's possible that at the time, those things were, like, she liked the teacher still and didn't want people to misunderstand, in her opinion, like, why a teacher would sleep with her. And then she might have grown up and been like, oh, like, this is not good. This was not a good thing. So, it's possible. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that it's what happened. I'm just saying, like, it's possible for you to change your perspective on being assaulted as you get older and as you understand, like, the nuances of assault and how, like, you know, things aren't necessarily, they're not your fault at all. And that, like, you know, people don't have to forcefully assault you to like, you know, take advantage of you. Willingness doesn't mean consent for somebody who's under a particular age. I just don't like, this is like a whole segment of like invalidation.
We could be here all day, but at what cost are we going to keep believing everything that comes out of her mouth? A teacher that can't defend himself, a teacher that was well loved, a teacher that was never arrested, that had a perfect reputation in the community. What about the victims of Trisha Paytas? When are we going to start taking them more seriously? Also, if you're a fan of Trisha, making excuse after excuse after excuse for her, it's not helping her. I believe this person needs serious help, and the more people feed into their lies and delusions, the more dangerous she is going to get. And
can I just tell you, like, and this is probably an irrational perspective, but like, the more I watch this video, the more I'm like bizarrely subconsciously siding with Trisha Paytas. And I don't know, I don't like that because I think that she's a bad person. But then you listen to something like this, and this is just so. This just feels like so, dude. It just doesn't feel right because it's so invalidating. Like, I know people who've been assaulted that I love very much, and it's like, this is fucking me up, and it's like, fuck, like, I don't know, like, this is making. This is just frustrating me. You know what I'm saying? It's just too much. It's like too much at this point. This point is needs to not be constantly reinforced.
There will be a lot more people that are going to be hurt in the process, but we're not done yet with this situation. I want to show you guys everything I got because I'm going to cover every single aspect of this and show you everything. Now, there's a ton of new information throughout this entire video, but there were a couple things I wanted to show you guys before we get into all the discrepancies in Trisha's stories. This info relates to the teacher we just talked about, and it relates to the other stories that Trisha has told online. I just wasn't really sure where to stick them in this video. So the first thing I want to show you guys is a clip that we watched at the beginning of the video, but I didn't really catch on to what she said until I was re-editing this video. So check out this clip and then we'll talk about it.
Like the only way the motivation stopped when I was a kid was when I started gaining weight. And I remember I went away for the summer with my dad and I came back to school and that same person, my abuser, was like, you got too fat. And I was 10.
So Trisha claims all this stuff about Mr. R was in the 6th grade and that she was about 12 years old. But in this clip, she specifically says that the only way that all of this stopped as a kid was when she gained weight, and then proceeds to say she was around 10 years old. So wouldn't that mean everything stopped at that point? If this is a true statement from Trisha, then this is another reason why all the allegations against Mr. R make absolutely no sense. I just thought this clip was interesting and it was another contradiction in Trisha's story. So I wanted to show you guys and kind of point it out to you guys in case you missed it when we watched it earlier in the video. Now, the other thing I want to show you guys is the clip from Trisha's mom's channel. If you watched episode 1, you guys know about husband number 4, which is Trisha's second stepdad. He came into the picture when she was in.
Yeah. I'd rather just stick to when Trisha contradicts herself. The good person and Statistical goes very tone deaf. Yeah, you're exact. Like 100%. And that's what I was talking about. Like, you don't need all this extra stuff to pad it in there. It's just like it's you know what it is. You know what bothers me about it? It's like I think that a lot of people, and myself included, drew the conclusion that Trish was lying based on like her own contradictions and her you know, etc. Like shit like that. It feels like Mysterious T is drawing the conclusion, already has the conclusion that Trisha is in the wrong, and then is just finding evidence that she feels supports that conclusion rather than having the evidence to bring her there. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like fucking flat earthers who are like, the earth is flat, and then they seek out specific information that verifies their story or validates their story. That's the energy that I get here. What? Well, he's dead anyway. That's the energy that I get here, rather than like going with the facts and then creating the story after that. That makes sense.
In middle school, which would be around the age of 12. Trisha's mom posted a video several years ago talking about how great this guy was, and he left her a bunch of money when he passed away, even though they were divorced and they haven't spoken in years, which is crazy considering Trisha described him as a violent alcoholic in her book. In the middle of this video, Lena says something that's pretty shocking. Check it out.
But I have to tell you one thing that happened in between his leaving. He had drank so much he fell into one of my daughter's beds, just stone drunk.
Yeah, that fucked up.
At that point, I was so afraid I was going to lose my children. I can't have someone who does that with my children in the house. And
it's interesting because I feel like it would be bizarre to feel like because somebody fell into a bed that you lose your children. You know what I mean? Like if I got drunk and went into my bed, I don't think there would be a risk of losing my children there or whatever. The risk would be if the words fell into the bed meant something entirely different. You know?
And because I didn't want my children taken away from me. I loved them. I wanted to raise them as I was raised, just wholesome and happy. And so I told him, I said, you really have to stop. But he did. He said, I can't stop. And I said, well, this is just the wrong time in my life. I guess for our marriage. And anyway.
I know it's pretty unbelievable, right? And we'll talk about what she said in just a second here. But if you go on to listen for about 30 more seconds, she goes on and on and on about how great this guy was, which is pretty unbelievable considering what she just said. Check it out.
Yeah, he's a good guy. But anyway, so back to the letter that I got in the mail. It was he left me as the beneficiary of his life insurance. And I'm like, first my thought was, well, this can't be right. I haven't seen him for 20 years. And I wasn't really going to do anything about it. And then I talked to my children about it, and they said, well, Mom, just look into it. He was a kind man, and you guys still love each other, when you part ways. Maybe it's just him in some way saying, hey, I love you, I've always loved you, and I know you have always loved me. So
there's no way she was talking about him just falling pass out drunk.
He probably just forgot to change it. I guess probably all it was. He probably just forgot to change the beneficiary. It's probably it. And she's trying to derive meaning from this thing because she has a meaningless life that nobody really loves her. So that makes sense.
Drunk into her daughter's bed, considering she said she didn't want her children to be taken away from her and she wanted her children pure and wholesome. What else could she be referring to? This makes me really sad.
I mean, it's a speculation. It's quite possible. Like, I agree that I don't think that it was just falling into bed, but also it's a speculative thing. So we want to be careful about making these broad, absolute assertions. You know what I mean? We don't want to be like, yes, this definitely is the way that it happened, because we really don't know, and it's a bad thing to make these heavy assertions. I don't think it's an unreasonable assumption though. I think it's a logical, reasonable assumption to make.
For Trisha, because I believe this is true. And considering Trisha, to my knowledge, has never spoke about this, I think Trisha's real trauma is extremely hard for her to talk about. Just like when she talked about Tiger in the clips that we watched in episode 1, she couldn't really say what happened. But for your own mother to talk about how great of a guy he was, considering she just got done saying he fell into her child's bed, I can't even imagine how hard that would be for Trisha. Now, I know this husband was around the age of 12 because she talks about him in her book and it takes place during that time. And also in the leaked text messages to Ethan, Trisha states that it was 20 years ago, which would make Trisha around the age of 12 or 13. Considering how much Trisha has talked about the Mr. R story and the age that it takes place, what if she's twisting what happened with her stepdad onto this teacher? Just something that came to my mind, but all I can really say is just that this is just really sad. Lena ended up deleting her entire channel after this video resurfaced, which is another red flag with this whole situation. But let's keep moving and get into the discrepancies with the stories. Before I get into all the clips, I know some people are going to be like, wow, you're really picking apart Trisha's stories. I completely understand where you're coming from, and I normally would not do this, but this is a unique situation. We have a teacher whose outstanding reputation has been severely damaged because Trisha blasted his name to millions of people, and we also have schools' reputations that have been completely smeared online, and I'm sorry, none of the recent stories from Trisha make any sense with each other, and I'm going to show you guys the many contradictions because this isn't right. Also, just to remind everyone again, Trisha has said multiple times in the past that nothing illegal ever happened with their teachers, so please also keep that in mind. If you have made it this far, just please watch everything together and look at this segment with an open mind. Before we get into the stories that get really confusing, I want to show you two stories that I think are clear-cut lies. The first one I want to show you guys is a TikTok where Trisha talks about her theater teacher at Pecatonica High School. This story is so outrageous. Check out what she says.
Most fucked up thing your high school theater teacher ever did. Go. I will start.
Okay, so he wasn't really a high school teacher. He was just the director of our play. This was in a town called Pecatonica, Illinois. It was my last high school I tried to attend. I attended 3. And theater, I was never good. My uncle at Byron was the director and it was awful. But this was in Pecatonica, and this had to do with my pee. I had to pee a lot because I was on a Slim Fast diet. I would just drink Slim Fast all the time. This was the second year in a row I was in these plays, and these were really shitty plays. I'm talking the Playhouse had probably 30 seats. No one came to see, and they weren't common plays. They were weird plays that no one heard of. I was in one called Swing Fever, and I can't remember the name of this one. So basically, I would leave rehearsals twice to go pee every time we rehearse. And this time he was telling me that I can't go pee, so I ended up peeing.
That sounds weird because I remember earlier she said that she drink Slim Fast, but she would drink 2 a day or something, 1 in the morning and 1 at night. Why would it make you pee that much? Unless she was constantly drinking water or she was fucking diabetic.
on the stage. So when I was wearing pads and I had my period and so no tampons, so you know where that was going. So I peed on stage and he told me that
or
I
like
actually
super unhealthy because your kidneys are just constantly processing shit in your body. I mean, those are all possible.
Up or I wasn't leaving. He locked the auditorium door and needless to say I escaped through the back and he was a freak.
First off, this is so far-fetched and absolutely ridiculous, but in case you actually believe this, there was a person that commented on a video of this TikTok and they claimed they went to Pecatonica High School with Trisha, and this is what they said. This is not true. I was literally there the entire time, including opening night, when you threw a fit and quit hours before showtime. You really need help. Now, this was on a video that was re-uploaded of this TikTok on YouTube. Just keep that in mind in case you're wondering why this comment is on YouTube and not on TikTok. Now, I'm not going to say this person's name on my channel, and you guys are just going to have to trust me on this, and I would hope that you could trust me because I would never knowingly lie about a situation like this. But when I saw this comment, I looked at the account and it was an account that's been around for a while. You can see this in the screenshot. So what I did is I looked up the name of the person in Trisha's yearbooks from Pecatonica, and this person is in fact listed in her yearbook. So I believe this is a real person that went to high school with Trisha. And in my personal opinion, I believe this person 100% over the story that Trisha put online about her theater teacher. It's just crazy to me how easy it is for her to lie. Now let's move on to the nanny allegations. So most of you know the big blowout fight on Frenemies that was early in the podcast. Trisha was being so disrespectful to Ethan and Hila, especially their parenting.
Yeah, somebody said everyone has already decided they don't like Trisha. This video seems obsessive picking it apart. You know what I think it is? I think that like you know what I think it is like she made this video already and this is a re-upload of the video because it got taken down. I understand why she wants to re-upload it, but she should have just kept it with the original stuff and just like moved whatever she felt like or whatever they made her move and just like, okay, there you go. Remove the pictures and whatever potential privacy concerns there were. That's all you really needed to fuck around with. But instead she added an extra hour to this. So like should have made another video, but probably should have just gotten the original video up. But like the problem is that like the criticism that she got that people were generally I think for like pretty nice about, she just continued like doubled, like she didn't take it into account. She just kind of continued the same fucking narrative. So I think that's the problem.
In this podcast, Trisha takes jabs at their choice over having a nanny in their home to take care of their son while Ethan and Hila is at work. This is the clip I'm talking about. Check it out.
Can we move past this?
When I have a kid, I'm not gonna have nannies, that's pretty I'm sure.
What does that mean? You're not gonna have a babysitter when you have a kid? How are you gonna do anything? You're gonna. What does that mean? You're trying to attack our parental abilities?
Let's just move on.
That's how everybody has nanny. They work. People work.
You can take care of kids.
What a scum bitch tactic though for her to say, I'm not gonna have a nanny, which is obviously inferring that like he's a bad parent for having a nanny, and then being like, let's just move on. Like trying to be like the maturest person in the scenario. Let's just move on. It's like you can't really just move on from something like that. Oh shit, boy. I get nated. You really just can't move on from a comment like that, and she knows that, and that's why it's such a scum bitch tactic to use.
It didn't work. I never had a nanny. My parents, I never had a nanny.
And so you think we're bad parents? That's what you're insinuating?
I said I would never have a nanny. Did I say you had a bad parent? You're putting words in my mouth. I literally said I would never have a nanny if I had a kid.
But I have a nanny. Yeah. That's a problem.
I don't think it's a problem. I would just, if I was lucky enough to have a kid, I would just spend my time with the kid and figure it out where we could, figure it out. Because my mom and dad did that. My mom was a single mom, and we still never had a nanny.
She didn't work when you were like 1.5?
She worked.
Like, how the fuck did you do anything? I was constantly watched by other people. It's absolutely necessary. Like, how the fuck am I supposed... Is my mom needed to have a job. My mom needed to work. She needed to be an adult. So I would be watched by friends, family members, the YMCA. I'd go there. Like, these are all basically nannies. How the fuck is she... She's just such a dumb, shitty person. I just fucking hate her so much. Like, this is the shit that reminds me of why I hate this fucking bitch with a fucking passion. Because she's just so... Like, she's, like, so invalidating of people. You know what I mean? Like that pisses me off as a son of a single mom. Because it's like, fuck you, bitch. It's just such a fucking... Because my mom used to work, like, 5 days a week. And she used to work, like, 10 to 12-hour days. So she would take the 2 days that she had off, and I would go to like the YMCA or blah 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 blah. And then when she was off, she would take me to like Boy Scout meetings and shit. And she would always spend her time with me. So it's like it feels like such an offensive thing to suggest that you're a bad parent if you use some kind of nanny service.
Worked at night.
And nobody watched you?
My brother.
Now, in this clip you guys just watched, Trisha specifically says that her mom never had a nanny. And at the end of that clip there, she even said under her breath she never had a babysitter. Well, after this aired, Trisha was getting backlash over pretty much everything she said to Ethan and Hila. And Trisha uploaded a video on her channel trying to explain her point of view. Now, keep in mind this video has been deleted off of her channel, but listen to what she says.
My personal experience, I had a female caretaker at a very young age.
Oh, I didn't hit my button at the right time.
Do inappropriate stuff with me.
This is what Trisha does. She takes something that is so horrible like SA to make people feel guilty into forgiving her, or she uses it to drive points across because SA is something that she knows should never be questioned online. Trisha specifically said in the fight she never had a nanny, and once the heat got on her, she made up the story about being abused by a caretaker as a child. One big thing I want to bring up is Trisha's mother worked 4 jobs. It's specifically stated in her book. And there are also clips everywhere of Trisha saying her mom worked 3 to 4 jobs her entire life, and it was just in the clip we just listened to on the Frenemies podcast. They didn't have a lot of money at all. Her father didn't have any money until Trisha was in middle school. So even if you were questioning it, I don't understand how they could even afford a caretaker. But if that wasn't bad enough, once her and Ethan tried to work things out on Frenemies and talk through what was said about the nanny situation, Trisha also tries to guilt trip Ethan on the Frenemies podcast with the same story. Check it out.
Throw a jab. I said something like, I wouldn't have a nanny. Then you said, tell me then how I should do it. I said, do you want my opinion? You said when there's 2 working adults, I said, do you want my opinion? And you said yes. I did throw the first jab at it, but you continued it and pushed it. So tell me about my parenting. I'm like, you really want to know? And you're like, yeah. I was like, all right, this is what I would do when I had a single mother that was working. My grandma watched me, not a nanny. I had a babysitter that abused me when I was 5 that was female.
We don't need to get into it.
But you just said it.
This is what's so shitty about her. It's like, that's not what happened. She prodded. She basically like fucking like misspoke like an asshole bitch. And then she instigated the conversation, and then like he obviously had to respond, because like, what's your response? Your response when somebody says something shitty about you is like, oh, what the fuck do you mean by that? And she's like, well, I was like, you asked me the question. It's your fault that the situation kept going. It's like, what a bitch, man. Fuck her.
No, because it's objectively true.
I'm glad Ethan kind of shut her down there, but the point of all this is to show you that she has no boundaries on the lies or manipulations that she puts out publicly. Okay, now let's get into all the teacher stories and the contradictions. So in this TikTok we watched earlier, Trisha specifically states that there were 3 separate incidents with 3 separate teachers at their school growing up. Trisha specifically says it happened in the school. I am going to play this part one more time because it's so specific, so just listen to what she has to say.
I was silenced for so long at my school growing up. I had 3 different incidences with 3 different teachers in regards to SA, R word, and M word. It happened in the school.
So keep both of those things in the back of your mind, that it was 3 teachers and it happened in the school that Trisha grew up in, which would be Byron. Also, recently on August 17th on Trisha's new podcast, they also confirmed once again that it was 3 separate teachers. Check it out.
I don't remember high school, really. I remember the important events. Okay, we switched high schools. I switched 4 times. I went to California, I went to private school. I switched a lot in high school, no pun intended. I remember, events. I remember sleeping with teachers. Okay, on this note, let me clarify this, because I'll be like, wow. Again, this is the disbelief, the compulsive liar. People just can't believe, wow, 3 different teachers had sex with you? It's like, yeah. As difficult as it may be for some people to believe, and in my head, it's not difficult at all. Like, to me, I thought it was normal. I saw it in movies. I was like, yeah, I will do this too.
So as we go through the different clips, count the different stories. We already know one of the 3 teachers is Mr. So that leaves 2 teachers that we don't know the names of. Recently, Trisha uploaded a TikTok on August 16th where they specifically said that they talked about their story on Keemstar's podcast, Mom's Basement, of an incident that happened when they were only 6 years old. In this TikTok, Trisha specifically says that she has never told anyone of this story until the podcast. Check it out.
This is why people shouldn't talk until they hear the podcast, because they sound absolutely stupid. I went on and shared my own R-word story that I've never shared with anyone else to drive a point across about it. I was super vulnerable. I was super embarrassed. But once it's out there, I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be judged forever for not saying something sooner, for not talking about it sooner, for doing it, for participating in it, for liking it. I shared my own story of SAR, which I've never shared with anyone else. And it was super hard because that's not a setting that I'm super comfortable in necessarily.
Okay, so it sounds like she's never told her parents about this. She's never told the public about this. She's never told anybody about the story. Okay, so now let's listen to the story that she told on Mom's Basement. Check it out.
Yeah, but I don't think you're a victim. Like, my teacher was having sex with me when I was 6 years old, and I didn't think anything was wrong with it. And up until, like, I still don't think, like, sometimes I, like...
6 or 16?
6.
Oh, that's awful.
And so I didn't know. Yeah, but, like, for me, I was like, oh, it was, like, attention from, like, an older guy. Like, I thought it was kind of cool. And then you realize, like, oh, that's, like, some fucked up shit. But, like, if you would have asked me, like, as a teenager, I was like, no, super cool. Like, actually, like, I didn't know it was sex at the time, right? You didn't know it was sex at the time. But then I was just like, oh, no, that was, like, I liked it, whatever. And it's, like... But a lesser version of that is when I was in David's vlogs.
First off, yes, that is the full story.
The problem I have with it is if, like, this situation happened when she was 16 and she was sleeping with teachers, and, like, that makes, like, some sense to me, that, like, a 16-year-old girl would be manipulated by their, like, teachers who were authority figures, who had issues at home, who clearly had daddy issues because the dad really wasn't around. That makes sense for her to, to willingly engage in something. It's not consensual, though. And to hide it for so long, and to think that it was okay until, like, being educated later about, like, how she was taken advantage of. But the whole, like, where she talks about she was 6 and liking it, I don't really think it's a normal response for a child to be like, yeah, I like this sexual activity. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but that just seems very illogical to me.
I listened to the whole podcast, and that was the only time they brought up this story. Secondly, a lot of the stories that Trisha has told usually is brought up when they're talking about David Dobrik. Most of the clips that we're getting ready to watch is when the David story was popping online. Lastly, Trisha saying she has never talked about this story before is really fucking confusing to me, because either there were multiple assaults when they were 6, or they have a really bad memory, because Trisha has brought up the 6-year-old story online a lot. But here's the thing about it. The story changes every time it's told. Now I'm going to play a bunch of clips for you guys about the story. I'm trying to play them in an order that is not confusing to you guys, because it does get really confusing since the story does change a lot. So on February 16th, 2021, Trisha brought up the story during a rant about AB and the H3 podcast when the David Dobrik stuff was just starting. This was right after AB defended the Vlog Squad, and Trisha brings up this 6-year-old story to prove a point that her whole life nobody has believed her. Check it out.
So from a very young age, people not believing me, people telling me from a young age, from 6 years old.
But didn't she also say when she was 6 that she went to court for being sexually assaulted? Did she say that? How old did she say that from? I'm just curious.
Someone saying that I provoked a sexual situation at 6 years old. And people believing that. Well,
and the judge said that it was her fault. Yeah, so this doesn't make any sense. So, like, if it was, I guess that was a different instance, a different person. There's just so much going on. Because then, like, if she's saying, like, oh, she used to think it was okay as a 6-year-old to do this thing, right? She's like, oh, I thought it was okay. I loved it, blah, 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 at 6. But then she's saying she went to court for it, and they blamed her for it, and that would have upset her. Well, it doesn't really add up to me too much. This is just so much. This is what you would focus on. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, Trisha? You know what I mean? Like, none of these stories make any sense. That's what you'd focus on, not, you know, the statistics.
She said she liked this movie, so this is why I did this. And people are like, oh, well, okay, that makes sense. Well, you know, Trish, at 6 years old, she watched Taxi Driver and described this explicit scene to me between a 13-year-old hooker and a grown man, so, like, that's why it happened. And the judge being like, yeah, actually, that makes sense. You're right. So, okay, Trish, did you say that? Yeah, I did say that. Okay, so that you deserve this. Same thing as a fucking teenager. Well, she wore this, you know, and she came into my classroom and locked the door, so, like, it's okay. Or that's why I did it. That's why I was provoked. She was a temptress. Just like the fucking David vlog. Well, Trisha did this, and she flirted with David, and so therefore all the time she said she was uncomfortable and didn't consent and didn't want to vlog. That's okay.
So there are a few things I want to point out with this. One, Trish said they went to court over this, and the judge actually blamed a 6-year-old child in court and ruled in the favor of the teacher, which seems so unrealistic to me. I get courts rule in favor of predators all the time, but for a judge to openly say, hey, it's a 6-year-old's fault, that judge would have been fired. Secondly, Trisha claims in this video that it was the movie Taxi Driver. And side note, how is a 6-year-old watching a movie like Taxi Driver? That just doesn't make any sense.
Well, that part's weird. Like, I doubt a judge would say to a child, like, oh, this is your fault, blah, blah, blah. They might not believe anything that she said. That's very common. That's common. I wouldn't doubt that a judge would be like, okay, thanks for telling us, blah, 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 and then, like, just ignore it. That makes sense. But to actively blame, I doubt it. But the Taxi Driver thing is like, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like she, she fantasized about this fucking movie for some reason. Maybe she did have, which probably does have a thing for, like, older men, so makes her fantasize about stuff. But
to me, that movie's a pretty bad movie for a 6-year-old to be watching. Then on February 13th, Trisha brings this up again. She doesn't.
It's just like, how are you? Like, it's just such a weird thing. It's like, that's a bad movie for kids to watch. Yeah, it is. I mean, I watch movies I wasn't supposed to all the time. Like, that's just fucking. You know, she has a bad mom. You think that she was only watching the good movies? You know what I mean? So we already established she has shitty parents. So the shitty parent letting her watch shit she shouldn't fucking watch is totally reasonable, or not reasonable, but it's totally plausible.
Doesn't state the age she was, but she does confirm that it was Taxi Driver. And then she names another incident with a separate teacher that was when Trisha was older, and says that a Jerry Lee Lewis movie was the reason for Trisha getting assaulted by a separate teacher. Check it out.
It stems from me being a little girl and having, you know, trolls a lot in school and stuff like that. It was, and being told from a young age, like, I'm like, oh, well, she wanted it, and she did this, and she dresses this way, and she talks about this. I remember my teacher put blame on me because I talked about how much I loved the movie Taxi Driver, which was about, you know, Jodie Foster being 13 and, like, seducing Robert De Niro and Harvey Keitel and stuff. And, like, I talked about that movie so much, and I idolized. I remember opening up to this, a separate teacher that I had an incident with about the Jerry Lee Lewis movie of Winona Ryder was 13 years old, or, you know, she was playing a 13-year-old having sex with her 21-year-old cousin. I said, I hope that, like, when I was 12 at the time, I was like, I hope when I'm 13, I hope I can have sex with somebody and stuff like that. And then, you know, so when they got confronted about it, their argument was like, well, she said she, like, wanted to, like, experience sex before she was 13, and then it was totally on me. And it's like, so I have that in my head that everything's totally on me. The best is, oh my god, you're so obsessed with them, like, just get over them. And, like, just like the trauma I experienced from ages 6 to 12, I still check up on that guy that assaulted me, and I always will follow what he does because it's just like this.
How, like, I mean, all honesty, this is you guys. How much of this do you think that she believes? You know what I mean? Like, how much of this do you think that she believes? You know? Because I don't know where it starts and ends. This is like fucking insane. It's just fucking crazy.
I don't know how to describe it. It's this grasp these people have on me.
So this is where things start getting really confusing. So they claim at age 12, a separate teacher assaulted her for another movie that they claimed that they liked. But I thought the incident at 12 years old was the teacher that did things during Heads Up 7-Up. And what are the odds that 2 separate teachers would do something to somebody because
it's Heads Down 7-Up, guys? Come on.
They said they liked a certain movie. And then she contradicts herself and says that she still checks up on the guy that did things to her from the ages of 6 to 12, acting like it was only one teacher. But I thought the Taxi Driver incident you went to court for. Even if they let the teacher go, wouldn't your mom make sure you were never around that teacher again? Like, so much of this is so confusing. So
That
the
part's
other thing about
probably
this whole
true.
thing
Although
is that
she's
Trisha
a shitty mom, but
specifically said the movie was Taxi Driver, but on March 2nd, in a
I
friend
think if anything, the teacher, the school, if anything, would still keep her away from that teacher. That wouldn't make any sense to have that around there because that's like a liability issue. Like you wouldn't have her around that kid. So that part is that's what I would say. Like, well, wouldn't the school say like, nah, no thanks, Trisha, we're moving your classroom? That makes more sense to me. Because the first thing you would do if there was an allegation like that is you would remove her from the class. Like that would be the thing. Like it wouldn't make any sense to keep them both in the same class. I feel like that's the pretty logical choice from like the principal of the school to remove her or to move him or something. You know.
Episode, Trisha completely contradicts herself and she says that the movie is actually Cape Fear, not Taxi Driver. Check it out.
Second time that happened, it was a teacher and another teacher, different teacher, and he's like, well, she told me she liked the movie Taxi Driver, so like, or Cape Fear, I'm sorry, Cape Fear.
Yeah, he would probably be suspended pending an investigation kind of a thing. But then he'd be back. I just feel like they would change the classrooms and whatnot at a certain point.
He's like, so I just put my thumb in her mouth to suck it. Anyways, it's a lot, but...
And that's not all. On February 11th, she uploaded a video talking about this again, and she claimed that she didn't speak up for 15 years about the incident when she was 6 years old, even though she has previously stated that the incident happened and she went to court for it when she was 6 years old.
And you go through, let's say you endure it for years. I didn't say anything until 15 years after I was molested as like a 6-year-old. Does that mean that, like, well, she did talk about it for 15 years, so it didn't happen. She didn't speak up, so obviously it wasn't that big of a deal. Fuck you, AB.
And then going back to the original TikTok of her saying Keemstar's podcast is the first time they spoke to anyone about this incident. She made it sound like she hasn't talked to her therapist or her parents about it. But on March 4th, she claims that for years, she told therapists and her parents that she was fine.
I was molested 6 years old by a teacher for years. And I told my therapist for years that I was okay with it. Even at the age of 12, I was with a teacher. And I was like, but I thought it was cool. I was fine with it, so that makes it okay? I said I was okay so many times to my parents, my family, even my therapist. I was like, it was fine, actually. I liked it. I was cool. I was a teacher's favorite. I liked older men. I was like, I wanted it. It was very Cape Fear, you know? And I kind of really did think I wanted it at the time. But like, looking back, I was like, oh my God, that like fucked me up.
All right, you guys, I got a couple more to show you and then we'll be done. On Dr. Drew's live stream, Trisha talks about this incident again when she was only 6 years old, but only this time she claims that it was at a summer camp that her dad put her in, not at her school in Byron. Check it out.
What can you talk about what happened in the childhood that was so murky?
You know, there was a lot of...
Yeah, I guess she did just have been her parents knew at that point. But I guess this would be beyond the point where she was already admitting it, so now they know. I don't really know. This story's all over the fucking place. Yeah, she used to make a lot of videos about seducing teachers. I mean, I wouldn't doubt that she fucked a teacher or like, well, that she willingly engaged with the teacher and was taken advantage of. I wouldn't doubt it. It's just that there's so much going on. It's hard to like figure out what's what and like what to and not to believe. You know what I mean? It's just it's all over the place.
A lot of stuff with like older guys that like I thought was like normal. I still try and process it, like, you know, with like the touching on my boobs or talking about my boobs, you know, like hugging from behind and like stuff like this, like, you know. But was it okay? And obviously now I know.
How old were you and how old were the guys?
The first memory I have was a summer camp when I was like 6 years old, and I remember like,
6 years
I'm gonna like, yeah, and that was like, this is something that like yeah, it's a lot because I remember it like again I remember it, but then it's like I don't remember like leading up to it because this was like a summer camp, and you know I just remember like all the details, but I don't remember, you know, going to my therapist, like, is it penetration, is it just, you know, outside stuff, like it's all so foggy to me, like that part doesn't feel, and I don't know, it's just there's a lot that I've never talked about even to like my therapist, and it's like I'm finally talking about it, but it's so hard because I don't remember so much of it, and I don't know.
Now, going back to the wrestling video, Trisha specifically said the only way the essay stopped as a kid was that they gained weight. And in the clip, Trisha specifically says that she went to her dad's for the summer and came back, and her abuser said that she had gained too much weight.
I remember I went away for the summer with my dad.
Yeah, see, like this is a good point to focus on because she's all over the place. It's like, what the fuck is she talking about? It's like a brand new fucking situation that she's invented.
Same person, my abuser was like, you got too fat, and I was 10.
So based on this clip with the Dr. Drew episode, that would mean Trisha was getting abused in Byron and when she would go visit her dad when she had to go to summer camp. And just a side note, Trisha never mentioned a summer camp in her book. You would think if her dad was sending her to camp every summer, like she said in the Dr. Drew live, that it would have been mentioned in her book.
Yeah, true. And also even her narrative before, it's like, well, I lied in the book about some things because I didn't want to admit them. She wouldn't lie about the summer camp. You know what I mean? Like if her argument's like, yeah, I withheld things. Like let's say in the book she says, it's like, oh, my teacher's never molested me, right? Or something like that, and then she's like, well, later on she's like, no, they actually did, I was just embarrassed to say it. Like, okay, I can believe that, but I don't believe that like she just she's like, what's the reasoning to lie about going to summer camp? You might lie about the interactions you had at summer camp, but why would you lie about summer camp? Like fundamentally, it's bizarre. That would be bizarre.
Her father had his kids with him, not shipped off to summer camp, and that's according to Trisha's book. Also, one other thing she mentioned in this wrestling video was she claimed that her neighbors were also essaying her.
I've been sexualized from 6 years old, from 6. From being called out for being a distraction by teachers to being molested by my neighbors, by people in power, people in authority.
Then going back to this Frenemies episode where she talks about Mr. R, Trisha also claims that this happened her 8th grade year.
I did say something originally and like no one believed me. It happened again my 8th grade year. No one believed me, and I was just like.
Also in this TikTok, Trisha claims another teacher incident in 2005, which would make Trisha around the age of 17. Okay, so let's summarize all this. First, the teachers. According to Trisha, there were 3 teachers and all incidents happened at their school. 1 is the allegations. 2 is the 6-year-old story with the movie reference. And I'm assuming possibly there was another 6-year-old story when she went on Mom's Basement because Trisha specifically said that she hasn't talked about it online. So I guess we will say that one is number 3. Then Trisha also stated there was another teacher at the age of 12 or 13 that also did something to her because of a different movie that wasn't Taxi Driver or Cape Fear. Or that could be another version of the story, who knows, but I'm going to call that number 4 since it seems like a totally different story. Then Trisha also claims this happened her 8th grade year, which would make her around 14 years old, but she didn't really go into details about that, but I'm going to go ahead and say that's number 5. Then the last teacher allegation would be the TikTok where Trisha talked about unwanted SA in 2005, which would make Trisha around 17 years old. Then also according to Trisha, they also got assaulted at the age of 6 in a camp in California, and they were also assaulted by their neighbors at an unknown age. And lastly, Trisha also claims that she was abused by a nanny around the age of 5 years old. First off, all of these stories that Trisha told were in the past year, and they all came out after the Frenemies episode with Dr. Drew that we watched earlier in the video. Secondly, why is there so many stories about teachers? Trish claims this happened 3 separate times by 3 separate teachers, but based on all the stories that we have watched in this video, it seems like there's 5 or 6 total teachers, which is odd considering Byron has no trace of any SA with any teachers online. Now, the 2005 incident would have been in Pecatonica, but there isn't anything online with that school either, so I don't really understand. The other thing is, why did they say their teachers were coming to their house when they originally said it all happened at the school? Here's the clip I'm talking about for context.
I'm pretty sure I was getting an R word by my teachers, and the principal didn't believe me, and I had to
Dude,
do it
you
every
gotta
single
love
day,
what a
so
dumbass
thank you
is.
for
He's like, you were bullied, you piece of shit. You had it coming.
I didn't miss school 4 times because teachers were being inappropriate, so thank you for that. And also just like,
well, the only
myself in 2005, that's why my band is 2005, this is the most trauma of my life, because teachers wouldn't leave me alone and they come to my house and just R word me.
And I want to point out, that's one clip that accidentally got cut out of the first episode. Trisha said on Frenemies she switched high schools because of being R-worded by teachers, even though prior to Frenemies, over the past 10 years, Trisha has always said she was bullied by her classmates. And one thing I want to specifically clarify on that, because some people are like, being sexualized is a form of bullying. Well, yeah, I agree with that, but Trisha's stories about bullying were always about kids making fun of her weight, her looks, stuff like that. It was never about being overly sexualized until the wrestling video that she put out about 4 months ago. So you guys, point blank period, none of these stories add up with each other. Each story has changed every time they spoke on it. They have specifically stated in the past that nothing ever happened with their teachers, nothing illegal ever happened with them, and they are accusing people of being a P-word that have no record of any inappropriate conduct. Also, don't you guys find it odd that the only teacher that Trisha called out by name is dead and can't defend himself? Why not call out the other teachers? It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. This is pretty much all the clips that I could find of Trisha talking about these different incidents, so use your own judgment on each story. And where was Trisha's mom during all of this time and everything else? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Oh, but there's more. We're not done yet. There's been a bunch of updates since I posted the original video of this, and we're going to go through some of those before we end this video. Now, as most of you know, there was someone that went to middle school with Trisha that came forward at just the right time to somewhat back up Trisha's story. We have to talk about this since I'm already re-editing this video. I just can't post this without the information included. I'm going to keep it real with you guys though. There's a lot of question in this situation, and I'm going to be transparent with you guys. A good chunk of this segment is circumstantial evidence and speculation, but I do have receipts to show you guys on why I feel the way I do in this situation. So let's start from the beginning before any of us knew that Morgan said something. On September 11th, 2021, Ethan Klein put out a statement on Twitter in reference to the teacher and what Trisha stated on Frenemies. This is a few days after my original video was posted. Ethan said the following: "It has come to my attention that Trisha in episode 17 of Frenemies called out a teacher by name and accused him of molesting her during school. She claimed this teacher was arrested and served time for possession of CP. She also claimed that someone else had come forward to say that he molested them as well. Upon further review, these claims seem to contradict available evidence. Because of the nature of these claims against the specific teacher and the stress it's causing to his family, I have decided to unlist the episode for now until Trisha can better illuminate the situation. I want to emphasize that I do not believe Trisha would lie about something like this, so I want to give her the opportunity to clarify. But in the meantime, because the teacher has passed on and cannot defend himself, I feel obligated to remove it for now." Ethan posting this was so big, and I really appreciate Ethan taking the steps to remove the episode. So when Ethan posted this tweet, of course the story spread like wildfire. The next day, on September 12th, Trisha put out a bunch of tweets. Some of them were in reference to Ethan's tweet, and some of them were about stuff going on with Moses. Shout out to Papa Gut, because he was one of the only channels that I can find that had all of these tweets, because every single one of them has been completely scrubbed off of her Twitter. Out of all of these tweets, there was one that really stood out to me, and Trisha said the following: "I've only ever shared stories when other people come out with theirs first. I have so many awful, unmentionable things that have happened to me in my life, but I'll wait till others share their stories until I chime in. People only believe me when others have the same story." Again, this was before any of us knew anything about Morgan. What immediately popped into my head was Trisha was probably getting in touch with someone from her middle school, and that person was going to come forward with something similar to what Trisha was saying online. What Trish described in this tweet is exactly how things unfolded online, and then Morgan magically came into the picture. The other thing that I found really odd during this time of Morgan coming forward is Trish was on her Facebook live streaming old videos. If Trisha posted on Facebook on a regular basis, I would have thought nothing of it, but prior to the recent stuff, Trisha has not been on Facebook since 2018. Her first activity since 2018 on Facebook was on August 23rd, 2021 to update her profile profile picture, and a couple other little postings that didn't get much attention. Side note, the few postings that she did were all after I posted a live stream talking about the teacher and talking about what I was putting in part 2. Trisha knows about this live stream because she vaguely responded to it in videos, and she also put a privacy claim on it, which is why it's not up on my channel. The reason I am focusing on Facebook so much is because Facebook is the #1 social media app people use to reconnect with people they went to school with. And we know that Trisha has talked to former...
I don't know about that. I think it's Tinder. I do Tinder. You always find people you know on there, bro.
Classmates on Facebook before, because there is a shit ton of receipts of her talking to people from her hometown. I am not going to read through them in this video, but pause to read if you want to see more information on that. So don't you guys find it funny that on the day that Ethan put out his tweet about removing the Frenemies episode, which was on September 11th, that Trisha posted a live video on Facebook that would get her followers' attention on the app. And then shortly after this, Morgan magically appeared. That's quite a coincidence if you ask me. Trisha also live streamed another video on Facebook the exact same day that Morgan's tweet started getting attention, and screenshots were being posted online, which was on September 13th, 2021. Could it be a coincidence? Yes, definitely. But Trisha has a lot of coincidences that constantly surround her, especially with this story coming out. Okay, so now let's talk about Morgan and the tweets she posted, and let's read through them. The original tweet that Morgan posted that got attention said the following. It's fucking true. I went to school with her. He wasn't arrested for CP, but he was fired for watching P at school. And yes, he used to grab us while we played Heads Up 7-Up. And my dad is the police chief in Byron, and I guarantee he remembers Mr. R being fired for watching P while students were in class, if you need further proof. Now keep in mind, she specifically said that it was a game of Heads Up 7-Up. Trisha has wavered with this game in some of her videos. Some of them talk about the game, and then some of them say that it was during test time, and some of them don't even involve the game. But put a pin in this game because we're going to talk about it a little later. The other thing I want you guys to keep in mind is Morgan specifically said that it was all true, which sounds like she's backing up all of Trisha's story. And the last thing to keep in mind about this tweet is she specifically says that Mr. R got fired for watching P at school, and in capital letters she says while students were in class. She makes it sound like she was there and she saw it happen, but how in the hell would you know this? Especially because it happened years later when he wasn't even her teacher anymore. So after this tweet sat for a day or two, people started noticing it and responding to her. Side note, what sucks is none of these tweets have timestamps on them, so I don't know the exact order of all these tweets, but the next one said the following. He would, quote, rub our shoulders while the game was being played so no one could see. He did this to multiple girls. I just don't know if we were old enough to pick up on what he was actually doing. It was in middle school. So before she claimed it was all true and claimed that he would grab them, but in this tweet she is saying that he would rub their shoulders, which isn't anything that Trisha has claimed. And she specifically says that he did it to multiple girls, which is a very important detail to keep in mind. Then the next tweet said the following. And I don't know who all he did this to, so someone else's experience could be totally different than mine, but I know he would rub our shoulders and go way too low. Now I'm not going to say this changed my life because it didn't, but he definitely did that. So before she claimed that he did this to multiple girls, but in this tweet she is claiming that she has no idea who he actually did this to, which doesn't make much sense because to me, wouldn't you at least remember someone else that this was done to if you were so confident that he was doing this to other girls?
Well, no, because so the way that it would work is that it'd probably be like a school rumor. So maybe like he was inappropriate with one girl, and then you're like, yeah, I heard it does the other people, and then all of a sudden like that's where that would build. I'm not saying it's true because of that. I'm just saying that that would be where it would come from. So yeah, I mean, it's quite possible that this guy was just like, listen, older people are inappropriate with touching, and I'm not trying to be like utilize any type of like apologist rhetoric, but older people can be very inappropriate, like with not understanding how to correctly interact. I suppose they could be a little touchy or pushy, or think that like a boundary that is normally established for younger people is like not a big deal to them. So it's possible he would just like be weird with some of them. Because I've had that before, like when I used to work, like the older guys would like fucking like sometimes like rub my shoulders, super uncomfortable, but I knew he didn't want to fuck me. Obviously that can be like a different interpretation from first like a woman, because I'm a guy, so like I mean if he tried to fuck me I could beat the shit out of him. But I think you understand my general point. But yeah, no, it's still possible. I mean, not like it's a completely impossible scenario here.
Those two statements contradict each other, especially because she says someone else's experiences could be different than mine, because before she made it sound like there were a lot of girls that were experiencing the same thing as she was. She also says this didn't change her life, which to me seems like she never gave it a second thought if it did happen. I have had teachers touch or squeeze my shoulders in school before, and I never gave it a second thought because I knew it was innocent. Touching or rubbing shoulders is not the same thing as Trisha claimed at all. Now moving on to the next tweet, she said the following. Okay, I'm not saying he was convicted of CP, I'm just saying he was very handsy with the girls and was fired for watching P. Hold for the message from my dad. Again, this contradicts a previous statement of not knowing who else it happened to and not knowing others' experiences. The next tweet, she drops the text message from her father, who is the police chief in Byron. The text message says the following. Morgan says, do you remember Mr. R being fired for watching P on his computer while students were in his class? Her dad responds with, vaguely. That's an odd question at 8 a.m. Morgan replies with, Trisha Paytas is famous now, and she outed him for being a creep. Her father responds with, oh. Morgan replies with, but she got it wrong. She said that he was charged with CP, and I said, no, I thought it was right. And then her father replies with, I don't think there were charges, but I don't remember specifics. Okay, so first off, vaguely is you barely remember something, so any specifics on the story from this person is immediately questionable, since it's something that they vaguely remembered. Okay, you guys, so hear me out. There's a couple couple things I found really strange in this text message, and I want to point them out to you guys. And this can be nothing, but I look at details so closely, which is why I notice shit like this all the time. So the first thing is, after Morgan's father said that's an odd question at 8 a.m., Morgan replies, Trisha Paytas is famous now, and she outed him for being a creep. And her father responds with, oh. Morgan is talking about Trisha like her father is immediately supposed to know who she is. She didn't say there's a girl in my school named Trisha Paytas who is now famous. She just said Trisha Paytas is famous now, which to me seems like she knows her dad should know the name Trisha Paytas. And because she is telling him that she is famous now, that tells me he doesn't know the name from Trisha being famous. So how I interpret that is Trisha and Morgan were possibly friends in school, which is why Morgan didn't go into many details about Trisha to her father in those text messages. Her father didn't respond back with, well, who is that? Or I don't remember her. He just responded with, oh. So why that detail is important is because if they were friends in school, then they may be in communication with each other over the years, or even recently, and both Trisha and Morgan acted like they haven't spoken to each other since middle school. Morgan actually told me she barely remembers Trisha in the school when I spoke to her in DMs. So I just thought that detail was interesting. The other thing about this text that makes me question things is Morgan's response back to her father when she says, she got it wrong. She said that he was charged with CP, and I said, nope, I thought I was right. Read that again to yourself. I said, nope, I thought I was right. She is saying the sentence, I said, nope, which sounds like she was directly responding to Trisha at some point and told her, nope, he wasn't arrested for CP. He was fired for watching P. Like I said, it could be nothing, cute. And it could be just Morgan.
Hey, come show it. Come here. Oh, don't show it. Love you.
Wording the text weird, but I'm
my fiance got a hanger that has like my last name on it. It's like Mrs. My last name. And so like she's excited about it, and I'm excited about it too. It's cute. It's a cute hanger. I don't know how, like, I'm not super like I don't know, I don't usually like give people my first and last name, so that's why it's weird. But I know like a lot of other influencers do. I don't know, maybe I should just get over it. But I don't know.
Already thinking in my head that Trisha and Morgan had contact with each other before Morgan even came forward. Again, this is just my speculation. Use your own judgment. It's a small detail, but just something to keep in mind. Now, the next tweet from Morgan says the following. He became chief in 2000, the year I was in 7th grade, and had him as a teacher. Mr. R was fired years later. So in this tweet, she confirms that her dad was police chief at the time of her having Mr. R as a teacher. She also claims that it was in 7th grade that she had him as a teacher. Trisha claims that she had him in 6th grade. They were in the same class as each other, so the timeline should match up. She also claims it was years later, which is what Trisha claimed at one point, and Trisha also claimed that it was a couple years later as well. Regardless, Mr. R wasn't at the schools after their 7th grade year. Trisha's 8th grade year, Mr. R had moved to a different school. So either way you look at it, the timing doesn't line up with each other. The next tweet says, a couple years, not multiple. I can get a hold of the principal who worked then. My guess is people questioned her about the timing, and then she changed her tweet to a couple years instead of years later. Now, I don't have the response to this next tweet, but someone asked her why didn't the police originally do anything about this teacher watching PE in a classroom full of students, and Morgan replied with this. Because it's Byron, Illinois, you wouldn't understand if you didn't live there. He was a well-to-do white man and was pushed under the rug. Okay, so there's a lot I want to say about this tweet. This tweet is very confusing because Morgan is insinuating that Mr. R was a wealthy person, and that is one of the reasons why it was pushed under the rug. Mr. R wasn't this rich man. He was.
I mean, like, well-to-do doesn't mean like super rich. I mean, like, you could call me a well-to-do white guy. Like, I do all right. Like, I do well. You know what I'm saying? It's not that big. I wouldn't say that it implies that he's like a millionaire. He just is a white guy that does well. It's well-to-do, you know? Usually you'd say well-to-do to, in the context of like how they grew up. Like maybe he grew up well. I don't know, but
was a teacher, and teachers don't make a lot of money. And I know some of you may say, well, maybe he came from money, and I would normally
it's
agree
possible
with you that is possible. But Mr.
Not all teachers make money, good money. But he's also a Vietnam War vet, right? So he probably has a pension from that or something. I'm just saying. I mean, she could just be playing like the identity, the id poll a little too much, which is entirely possible. Just like this guy's about to die.
Background and criminal history has been looked at by numerous of people online, and this can be verified easily. But Mr. R had to file bankruptcy at one point, and people don't file bankruptcy unless they are struggling financially. So her statement makes.
Oh, so then it's just quite possible that it's just like a bullshit talking point. You know what I mean? That's quite possible as well.
Absolutely no sense. She also said another reason why this was pushed under the rug because he was a white man. But Byron, Illinois is predominantly a Caucasian town. So to insinuate that his skin color was one of the reasons it was pushed under the rug makes no sense either. Plus,
also, Trisha's white. Yeah, no, it sounds like she's just like trend riding like the social narrative right now. But it sounds like more than anything else. It's like, oh, she's a white man. It's like, okay, that's cool. You know, good for him, I guess.
if it was pushed under the rug, how would she even know that? Because she wasn't even that confident with him getting fired until she started dropping screenshots from her father and former students. So if she had to verify the information, how would she know that something like this got pushed under the rug? It's just a weird statement. Now, the last tweet I'm going to show you guys is the tweet that made her disappear. Someone replied to Morgan with the following tweet. If your dad was police chief and he knew the teacher was handsy with little girls and didn't arrest him, he probably should step down as chief of police. And then Morgan replied with, he wasn't chief then. So she changed her statement about her father being police chief during this time and then deactivated all of her accounts. One thing I want to say is if you go back and look through all of these tweets, there's hardly any traction on them. I was watching all of this happening and there were about 2 or 3 people people questioning her, and the tweets that were questioning her weren't mean or hateful. They were just questioning the situation, and they weren't doxing her either. But she deactivated everything, which is odd to me. Yes, she did get doxed and doxed herself, but it wasn't until after she disappeared that people were starting to share the screenshots everywhere. The other thing I want to point out is Trisha was completely private when Morgan's tweets started to get attention because she had her Twitter breakdown 2 days prior. But Trish started liking these tweets immediately referencing Morgan, including a tweet that straight up doxed Morgan, bringing more attention to that girl and her personal information. Trisha's Reddit also posted screenshots doxing the girl. And I'm going to say one other thing about Morgan. I did talk to Morgan in DMs because she came back for a short period of time and put her account on private before disappearing again. And she did say it was okay for me to share some of this info as long as I kept it private, which I have redacted all of her info in this video. I specifically asked Morgan if she heard anything about Trisha and teachers at her school, any rumors or allegations against Mr. R or any other teachers, and Morgan replied with the following: "No, I didn't, and I didn't hear any rumors about her and other teachers. If they went around, I've since forgotten." Given all the stories that Trisha has told in regards to this teacher, don't you think this rumor would have been everywhere at Byron? Wouldn't there be more to this rumor than just him getting fired for pee? Something about the situation doesn't add up to me, and I find it so convenient that nobody from Byron has spoke up all these years when Trisha has dragged the towns, the schools, and the teachers through the mud. They only spoke up when Trisha was in hot water over a lie that she told
I mean, that's a fair point. Yeah, I suppose that's a decent point.
To people.
Well, probably because most people just don't know who the fuck Trisha is. You know what I mean? Like, who the fuck is Trisha really?
Magically, Morgan appears right when Trisha needed it the most. And what is so funny, this Morgan person was in my original video when I showed the yearbook page to verify the yearbook and the teacher. So out of all the people that were in the middle school, it just so happens to be a person that could be easily verified. But please, make up your own minds about the Morgan situation. These were just all the things that were red flags to me. The other thing is we do have statements from Byron students about Mr. R, and not one of them verified Morgan's or Trisha's claims about the teacher being handsy. They only commented on whether or not he was fired. So let's go through all of those right now. So this first screenshot was dropped by Morgan on Twitter, and it was a group chat with some of her Byron classmates. And she said, "I'm in a very heated Twitter argument. Do you guys remember Mr. R being fired for watching pee on his computer while kids were in class?" And somebody replied with, "Yes, I remember. I think it was Paul Redacted who caught him." And then another person replied with, "Yes, I remember." Now this next screenshot came out of a Byron Facebook group, and somebody in this group asked if they knew Mr. R, and somebody replied with, "He passed away." And somebody else replied with, "There are pretty serious allegations made by a famous internet person, which I'm finding hard to believe considering he was employed in 2 other schools after Byron." And then a former student of Mr. R replied with, "I remember him, 6th grade. If I remember correctly, there were allegations that he was looking at adult content." And then in parentheses, they said maybe worse on school computers. The other side of that, I heard he was set up by parents that didn't like him for one reason or another with a link to questionable content in an email. Last time I heard anything about this was probably 15 years ago. It's been a long time. Now this next screenshot is also out of that Byron Facebook group, and the person said the following: "As a former student over 27 years ago now of Mr. R, I find the allegations appalling. Mr. R was always professional, steadfast teacher who not only taught us what was in books, but to think for oneself and to be heard, to have an opinion and a voice, and to be a positive contribution to whatever you engage in. He was loud, he was direct, and he always told it like it was, but he gave us as much respect as he demanded of his students. He taught us what it meant to have pride in others and ourselves. He was an awesome teacher and one I will never forget." And the last screenshot says the following: "Hi, I was a student of Mr. R in 6th grade. My dad was also decent friends with him as he also taught at Byron and coached his sons. From what I recall from my dad, Mr. R opened an email from either a coworker or a friend that had adult content. A student saw it and reported it to their parent, and he lost his job. He did go on to teach and coach in other districts after that. He was never inappropriate ever. He also helped with women's..."
Oh, okay, so somebody didn't like him and sent him. I think I remember that. Somebody didn't like him, and then they apparently sent him pornography, and then he got in trouble for looking at it at school. Okay, I mean, you know.
Basketball. Trisha Paytas was a year younger than me in school, and from what I recall, she was mostly homeschooled during her 6th grade year. First, let's talk about the claims of Mr. R being fired for pee. All of these other screenshots, the former students are all over the place on what exactly happened. Some of them think it was an honest mistake, some of them think it was a setup by a parent, and some of them heard that he was purposely doing it, because that's what happens when rumors start. It's like a game of telephone. The story starts out as the truth, then by the time it gets to the last person, it's a completely different story with completely different context to it. I also want to point out there is nothing on Mr. R's teaching record that would indicate he got fired for something like this. This is also easy to verify. There are postings all over the internet about this.
I mean, it's quite possible that he did this thing and they had to fire him, and so they were like, all right, we're not going to put it on your record, but like we got to say something about it, you know what I mean? Like, that's quite possible.
I am just not putting the real personal information in this video because I think it's unnecessary since it's all been verified on Reddit, and I don't want my video to be all his personal information everywhere. But this all has been verified online. There is nothing on his teaching record. He was able to go on teaching for 15 plus more years at 2 other schools after Byron. If he was actually sitting in a classroom full of students watching pee, there is no way he would have gotten another job. If this story is true, I'm more inclined to believe that it was a mistake or a setup, which would make sense as to why he was able to go on teaching at other schools. One more thing I want to talk about before we get into Trisha's response. When Trisha had her breakdown on Twitter, she also linked DMs between Ethan, Hila, and herself. There are a couple DMs that I want to read real fast. The first one says the following: Ethan says, "You need to make a statement on the Mr. R stuff." And Trisha replied, "You don't get to tell me what I need to talk about. I've talked with his family. They are unaware of the report I made as a child. They want it to go away. You do not get to tell me how to handle my essay." And the other one I want to read is, "I am begging and pleading for the last time to never mention me in passing again. Moses is now being falsely accused of R. I was M-worded as a child and the family had no idea. And now they're getting harassed because you guys are allowing the subreddit to post his name. I am happy the frenemies is taken down. I was told inaccurate information as I often misspoke on situations that I just believe without researching. I had reported this as a teenager. There are reports of it. First off, I do not believe for one second that the family family would speak to Trisha. Trisha told a lie of him being arrested for CP to millions of people. I do not believe for 1 second that they would give Trisha the time of day. Secondly, Trisha claims that the family did not know about all of this, but then goes in to say that there are reports at the school about this teacher. So how on earth would they not know about any of this? Also, if there are in fact reports at the school, how in the hell has nobody heard of these allegations with Trisha and the teacher? And how in the hell did this not make the news if there were allegations against a man that was well respected in the community? If you don't live in a small town, you probably won't understand this, but in small towns, everyone knows everyone's business. And something like SA on a 12-year-old child by a well-respected teacher and a war vet, this would have been the main rumor that
it really just keeps digging into this whole thing where it's just like he couldn't have done it because he was a nice guy. It's just like fucking ridiculous.
Everyone would know in reference to this teacher, because getting fired for P is minor compared to SA on a middle school student. Also, if there were reports of this, why isn't the report on Mr. R's teaching license? And why hasn't the school gotten in major trouble for ignoring reports like this? Because this school would have been caught at this point for sweeping stuff like this under the rug, and there isn't one story online in reference to this school and inappropriate conduct with teachers and students. Lastly, why would a school ignore a serious allegation like Trisha has claimed and sweep it under the rug, but then turn around and fire this teacher for watching P at school? If there was this big conspiracy with this teacher and him being protected, I don't understand why they would fire him for P, but he could continue teaching after being reported for SA. It just doesn't make any sense at all. And lastly, I just want to point out the reason the family is getting harassed is not because of the H3 subreddit. It is because Trisha doxed this teacher to millions of people online, and she still has a TikTok up on her TikTok saying inaccurate information about this teacher and calling him out by name and telling people to go look him up. She has not taken this TikTok down since any of this came to light. So of course, after Morgan came forward, Trish made the decision to address the situation in a video, and this is what Trisha had to say.
No, this lying thing has come around recently that Trisha lies so much. There's a difference between misspeaking, hearing things, and not getting all the facts right, not fact checking.
Yeah, the misspeaking bullshit that fucking Dr. Pooh drove into her head. Basically, just another way for her to feel like she can justify lying. Be like, well, it wasn't really lying, it was just misspeaking. It's okay if I do that.
Versus sharing something you know to not be true for the most intent of tricking someone or making someone look bad. I get stories mixed up. I hear things from people I don't fact check, and that was ultimately why I should never have had a podcast. I should never have been on front of me. But I'm not the only person in the world to do that. Having said that, I have never lied about any things that have happened to me. I've only felt comfortable enough sharing and stating the name of somebody after I'd been told about what I said, and I would correct myself, was arrest for CP, which is actually fired for watching P in a classroom full of kids.
First off, this is more than just not fact checking. She told millions of people to look up arrest for CP that isn't real. She doxed a person and their family when she told this lie, a lie that is still up on her TikTok. Secondly, there is no proof that Mr. R was ever fired for watching P at school. This is another fucking rumor that Trisha carelessly told to her millions of followers. There's no proof of this at all, and there's so many conflicting stories with what happened. She is just smearing his name all over again.
I never lied. It was a hard thing for me to even say then, but I felt safe enough to do it because of that reason. I've only ever felt safe enough to talk about someone when other people are talking about them, and you're like, hey, first and foremost, this family's getting doxxed. This man in question is deceased, and the family is getting harassed, which it's turned into a lot. And the source of all this is the H3 subreddit. That is without a doubt where it's from. I check it like I would check up on a toxic ex-boyfriend, trying to figure out like what they're saying, what's happening.
They're all so on top of their objectives, and my team is just like jerking off. It's fucking incredible.
Next, and that's where all of it's stemming from.
No, Trish, this is your fault. You are the one doxing people who passed away and can't defend themselves, accusing them of crimes they never committed. You're urging millions of people to look it up. It's your fault the family is getting harassed and doxed. It's not H3's fault. It's not the subreddit's fault. It's not my fault. It's your fault.
All the information and the harassment, and I was just getting harassed constantly every weekend saying, apologize to this person because of a video that someone just Googled some facts, said this person is this, and this, saying their name. So sending more hate to the family, saying their name to me, which was just beyond triggering, because here's the thing. I never thought any of this was a problem. I thought relationships I had with teachers and older professionals my entire life as a child, as a minor, as a teenager, was fine. No one talked about it. No one said it wasn't. Like, and even for me, I never felt trauma. I talked about this numerous times. I never thought it was trauma. I never thought it was trauma until I started unpacking it. And I was like, oh, this might be the reason for this. I switched school districts 5 different times. I went to Byron School District up until the age of 14, and I switched from a different.
Well, my thing is if you didn't think it was traumatizing, why did you switch schools 5 times? Like, that's a question that I have. Like, if this situation does exist, like, it's a genuine question. It's like, okay, you didn't think it was traumatizing, so why did you switch schools 5 times? Like, wouldn't that indicate some kind of a trauma or what? I'm confused. Like, you never knew it was wrong, but then you also said that your parents didn't know about it, but then they did. It's just like, it's just such a confusing fucking story. You know what I'm saying? It's just like everywhere. It's all over the place. Your mom kept moving. Right. Okay. But then what does the moving 5 times narrative have to do with literally anything? You know what I'm saying?
Reason that was also misconduct. I have no sympathy for what I said. I have no sorrow for that. I just wish literally families were getting harassed, and also I wasn't getting harassed for it. This is why I will never talk about ever again even if someone comes out with stories about teachers or medical professionals in multiple school districts. I had conversations. I'll never say anything anymore because of this reason, because of the backlash. I was always scared of it before, and now it just proves my point that no matter what I say.
Trish, yes, I Googled some facts. I did some research. I looked into the situation. None of it makes sense at all. And yes, it is facts. Cold, hard facts. Secondly, I had to say his name because I had to prove his innocence because you doxed him and spread a lie on your platform to millions of people. And in your response to, you thought all of this was fine, you never seen anything wrong with it, you didn't see it as trauma and all this other stuff, then why would you report it? Why have you said over and over again that you have reported this incident, even though there's no proof of it anywhere, that you reported anything, that any of this ever happened? Nobody has any recollection of it. If you've seen nothing wrong with it, but why would you report it? I don't understand that at all. There's so much that you say that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Now, someone did come out, a former classmate of mine, which is it's easily verifiable that this was a classmate. We were in the exact same class the same year. This person shared really personal information to verify they were who they said they were. Their dad is prominent in this town, and this person shared all that information, shared text messages with other people we went to school with, talking about this incident, and basically just saying, yeah, like he was creepy, just like I said. I mean, grab me, okay. There's way more severe stories that happened with other people, but this particular situation, same situation, during the game, all this stuff, and then, he did get fired for.
Now, Trisha mentions the game in this clip, which we have confirmed with Morgan that it is in fact Heads Up 7-Up. Now, you guys saw all the clips together and heard everything that Trisha claims this teacher did to her during a game of Heads Up 7-Up, right? So here's my question to Trisha. How in the hell is it possible for a teacher to achieve the things that are being claimed if Heads Up 7-Up is a game where there are 7 students that are standing up with their eyes open while the rest of the class has their...
Oh my God, Mysterious must have watched the podcast with Mama Gut, because Mama Gut made, it was, we were talking about the Petty Page video. We were talking about the Petty Page video, and Mama Gut made that point, and then all of a sudden, that's funny. It's just funny that whole narrative came up because Mama Gut made that point. It was a good point too. It was mind blowing when she said it. I was like, wait, what? It's just so funny. This is very funny.
Their heads down on the desk with their thumbs up. How could a teacher go down your pants, kiss your neck, feel your chest if there are 7 students with their eyes open the entire time, with their main focus being on the students with their heads down, which would include Trisha? I do not understand how it's possible to do these things, and he was never caught. The other thing is Mr. R was a high school teacher. He wasn't normally a middle school teacher. 98% of his career was teaching at high school. So I find it odd that an advanced high school teacher like Mr. R would play such an elementary game like Heads Up 7-Up anyways.
And then people are making excuses for that even. There's, no matter what I say, it'll never be good enough. And now that someone come forward, that person's getting harassed. I try to follow her as of today to at least reach out and just at least say thank you for just, because she did say no, he wasn't arrested, and the person who told me originally, they also had instances with similar in our sphere, and so thank you for she had a different thing and different reaction and all this like that, but this is a person. I haven't talked to anyone from Byron, Illinois in 15 20 years, probably, if you want to be specific, probably 19 years. I haven't talked to anyone. I moved away when I was 14. My mom let me come live with my dad in California because of a situation that happened, and when I was 14. And I switched schools a lot. I don't want anyone getting harassed in a situation. Not that someone come forward. It's not good enough. It's just a random person, which can easily be verified in our yearbooks. I heard rumors that this teacher was in teaching. That's also going to be verified. There's so many things that can be verified. I didn't feel comfortable talking about it further. The time when I mentioned it on the podcast, I was talking about that therapy at the time, and I was heated. I was upset, and I don't talk about it because part of me is a lot. There's a lot of emotions. Part of me is oh, it wasn't that bad. I laughed. I thought it was funny. I liked attention. Stuff like that. And part of me is no, it wasn't. And after this weekend, just seeing it spammed, and then also the note from Ethan, and then the text from Ethan being you have to make a statement about this. And I was just it started the panic mode in me. It was the fight or flight that kicked off, and I was just oh my gosh. And then I really started feeling I did do something wrong in this situation.
Well, what's so interesting is that you don't have to talk about your assault, but when you do talk about it, you kind of have to talk about it. You know what I mean? So it's oh, I don't talk about my assault. Okay, I agree. But then she was the one who brought up the Mr. Rhyme thing in the first place, and then she was the one that had an inadequate situation. So it's kind of another instance of her riding a particular, yeah, you don't have to talk about your assault. That's the going narrative, and it's a good narrative because that's the way that you should operate. But then when you look into it a little bit deeper, you're oh, wait a minute, it doesn't apply to Trisha in this situation because she was the one who talked about it in the first place.
Okay, I have a lot of things to say to this, and then we're going to be done. So she is acting like she only shared this on Frenemies and was only comfortable talking about on there because she was heated and upset, and goes on to say that that was the only time she felt comfortable talking about it. But you guys saw all the clips and how many times she brought up the story. So that's a lie. The other thing is she is insinuating she switched schools due to misconduct when I have a whole video showing a completely different story and years of receipts of Trisha talking about how she was bullied from the kids in her school, not teachers. Over the past 10 years, Trisha always claimed it was mean kids until Frenemies. Also, she specifically says, again, there was someone else that had stuff happen with the teacher, even though there's no trace of any of this. I also find it funny that she specifically states that all of this can be verified in yearbooks because she knows that Morgan was in the video. That's why all of this is so convenient. You guys have no idea how hard it was to find those middle school yearbooks because they do not keep those online. The high school yearbooks are easy, but middle school, it took me months and months to get a source to verify this information and get my hands on those yearbooks. So it's just so convenient that Morgan was one of the ones that was on the one page that I showed out of that yearbook, even though the yearbook had pages and pages of different students that weren't shown in the video. Lastly, Trish, you did do a lot wrong in this situation, and your denial...
Oh, I see what she's saying. That kind of makes sense. Trisha Trisha just looked at her yearbook and then just chose a person on her own page. Is that what she's trying to say? That's interesting. Possible.
It's just, it blows my mind. And I was hoping you would do the right thing, but I was ignorant to think that you would actually do that. You got my first video taken down and you removed almost every single video that I pulled clips from to show your contradictions that you put online during the David Dobrik situation. You were trying to erase the last year of frenemies of all the stories of essay that you put online. And if you guys don't believe me, look in the description of this video. Click on the sources. They're all privated almost. Even with all this evidence, there are people that are still going to believe Trisha. And just know, if you keep making excuses for her, you're not helping her at all. I want to play one more clip before I go. Maybe Trisha truly doesn't know what reality is. Maybe this is something that she truly can't help. Check out this clip and you'll see what I'm talking about.
I did it for my own self. I'm someone who suffers from delusions and not knowing what reality is. And I wanted to hear back everything because people constantly tell me what I say, and I want to hear it back from myself.
If Trisha truly suffers from delusions and not knowing what reality is, then how can we trust any of these stories are even true? I personally believe Trisha knows what she is lying about, but maybe I'm wrong. And this could be a reason for her telling these stories. Like I said before, what about the victims of Trisha? When are we going to start taking them more seriously? I still believe Trisha is a victim. I will never deny the trauma that I feel is real, and the trauma that I feel has affected her is her mom's boyfriend, Tiger. Trisha, if you are watching this video, it's not too late to tell the truth. More people will respect you for coming clean and telling the truth versus if you keep dragging this teacher's name through the mud. Trisha, I think you need serious help with the lies that you tell the public. I really hope that you get the help that you need and work through whatever it is you need to in order to be more honest and not lie. I hope you start making real amends with the people that you have hurt, and I'm not just talking about what I spoke on in this video. I hope you make amends with everybody that you have hurt with the lies that you have told. So anyways, you guys, that's the end of today's video. I know this was a really long one. If you made it through, that's absolutely amazing. And before I go, I want to take a quick second to thank all my members, and I apologize if I pronounce any of your names wrong. Thank you to Sarah, Lydia, Obscura.
Okay, I mean, yeah, I mean, listen, man, it was pretty much the same video, plus more stuff. I appreciate all the investigative work and everything, but it kind of, like, I think it would have been better off if she had just taken the video, like the original video that she made, and if she had, like, edited up what she needed to cut in and cut out and re-uploaded that, and then whatever additional information she did, you know, later on, because, I don't know. There's so many things. Like, it feels very personal. I think that there's a lot of factors for that. I mean, it came out like way after like it's like 5 weeks later, you know what I mean? And I feel like it would have been a lot faster to just get the video out there. But we kind of did a little bit of extra guesswork there, and I think that it ended up hurting it. Because it's just like feels like beating a dead horse, I guess. But then also the new information didn't exactly help, like the negative old information that was not good. You know? Like the whole statistical bullshit and all that other fucking nonsense. So it was alright though. Your brain feels numb from this? Yeah, for sure, man. I fucking understand that 100%. I understand that 100%, dude.